Sabrina Vale had exactly 4 days before the board of directors would vote her out of her own company. 4 days to prove she wasn't too unstable to lead a billion-dollar empire. 4 days to find a solution to a problem no amount of money could fix, because the real issue wasn't her quarterly reports or her strategic vision. It was the empty chair beside her at family events. It was her last name attached to no one else's. It was the fact that at 30 years old, she had built everything except the one thing her shareholders apparently valued most, a conventional life that looked stable on paper. Thank you for joining this story. If you stay with me until the end, please hit that like button and comment with your city so I can see how far this journey has traveled. 2. Part 1. The boardroom smelled like leather and expensive cologne and barely concealed contempt. Sabrina sat at the head of the table, with her spine perfectly straight and her hands folded in front of her, watching 12 faces pretend to care about quarterly projections when what they really wanted to discuss was why she still came to these meetings alone. Revenue is up 18%, she said, keeping her voice level. We've acquired 2 competitors in the last 6 months, and our market share has never been stronger. Richard Pemberton, the oldest board member and her father's former college roommate, nodded slowly. He had kind eyes that made his cruelty worse somehow. No one is questioning your business acumen, Sabrina. The numbers speak for themselves. Then what exactly are we questioning? Silence settled over the room like dust. Finally, Richard leaned forward. Stability, leadership continuity, the long-term vision for Vale Industries beyond your personal tenure. Sabrina felt something cold slide down her spine. I'm 30 years old. I think we have time to discuss succession planning. Do we? The voice came from the far end of the table. Marcus Vale, her cousin, smiled at her with teeth that had been straightened by the same orthodontist who had worked on hers 15 years ago. Because from where I'm sitting, you've built an empire on sand. No partner, no family, no roots. What happens if you burn out? What happens if you decide this is all too much? I won't. Everyone says that. Marcus spread his hands like he was being reasonable. Look, we all admire what you've accomplished. Taking over after Uncle Richard died and turning this company into what it is today, that's remarkable. But you're carrying everything on your own shoulders, and eventually that becomes a liability. To whom? To the shareholders. To the employees who depend on stable leadership. He paused. To yourself. Sabrina looked around the table. Half the faces wouldn't meet her eyes. The other half were watching her the way people watch someone standing on a ledge, curious whether she'd jump or step back to safety. There's a family gala in 4 days, Richard said quietly. The annual Vale Foundation event. Every major investor will be there, along with the press. It would be good if... He stopped, choosing his words carefully. It would be beneficial if you didn't attend alone this year. Something bitter rose in Sabrina's throat. You want me to rent a date so the shareholders feel better about their stock options? I want you to show them that you have a life outside this building, Richard said, because right now, all they see is someone who works 80-hour weeks and goes home to an empty apartment. That's not sustainable, Sabrina, and unsustainable leaders get replaced. She stood up. Every instinct told her to stay, to argue, to fight this with logic and data and the sheer force of will that had gotten her this far. But she could see it in their faces. This wasn't a battle she could win with quarterly reports. Meeting adjourned, she said. Marcus was smiling as she walked out. The city looked different at 3 in the afternoon on a Wednesday. Sabrina had almost forgotten that regular people lived regular lives that didn't revolve around board meetings and hostile takeover attempts disguised as family concern. She walked 6 blocks from Vale Industries headquarters before she even realized where she was going. No destination in mind, just away. The cafe appeared on a corner she'd passed 1,000 times but never actually seen. Small, warm light in the windows, a chalkboard sign advertising soup and sandwiches, like those were special things worth celebrating. Sabrina pushed through the door, and the smell of coffee hit her like a memory she couldn't quite place. Be right with you, someone called from behind the counter. She sat at a table near the window and pulled out her phone. 17 emails. 3 texts from her assistant asking if she was all right. 1 message from Marcus that just said, Let me know if you want to talk. She deleted it without reading further. Through the window, she watched a man crouch down on the sidewalk beside a little girl who couldn't have been older than 6. The girl was crying, not the dramatic, attention-seeking kind of crying, but the quiet, devastating kind that came from real disappointment. Sabrina watched the man, tall, maybe early 30s, wearing jeans that had seen better days and a jacket that didn't quite fit, gently wipe the girl's face with his sleeve. He said something Sabrina couldn't hear, then pointed at the pastry that had fallen onto the concrete. The girl shook her head. He smiled and said something else. Then he did something that made Sabrina's chest hurt in a way she didn't expect. He sat down on the sidewalk beside his daughter, right there on the dirty concrete in the middle of the afternoon, and pulled her into his lap. Not to fix the problem, not to make the crying stop, just to be there while she was sad about a dropped pastry that probably cost $2. The girl buried her face in his shoulder and he rubbed her back in slow circles and waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Cars drove by. People walked past. The man just sat there holding his daughter like he had nowhere else in the world he needed to be. Eventually, the crying stopped. The girl pulled back and said something. The man laughed, really laughed, his whole face transforming, and nodded. They stood up together, leaving the ruined pastry on the sidewalk, and walked into the cafe. Sabrina watched them approach the counter. Watched the man lift his daughter so she could see the display case. Watched her point at something and watched him nod even though Sabrina could see him counting coins in his palm first. "Can I get you anything?" Sabrina looked up. The waitress was young, tired, kind. "Coffee. Black." When the waitress left, Sabrina glanced back at the man and his daughter. They were sitting 3 tables away now. The girl was coloring on a paper placemat with crayons the cafe must have provided. The man was helping her stay inside the lines, his hand wrapped around hers, guiding the crayon with careful patience. He looked up. Their eyes met for exactly 2 seconds before Sabrina looked away, feeling caught at something though she didn't know what. When her coffee came, it was lukewarm and unremarkable and the best thing she'd tasted in months. Get it. Sabrina stayed at the cafe for an hour, then 2. She told herself she was reviewing documents on her tablet, preparing for meetings that suddenly seemed to matter less than they had that morning. Really, she was watching the man and his daughter exist together in easy, comfortable silence. The girl, Ellie, she heard him call her, talked constantly. About school, about a friend named Maya who could do a cartwheel, about a cat she'd seen on the way there that had 1 white paw and 3 orange ones. The man listened to every word like she was describing something profound. "Daddy, do you think Miss Caroline will let us have extra art time tomorrow?" "I don't know, sweetheart, but if she doesn't, we can do art at home. We don't have the good paper, though. We'll make do with what we have." "But it's not the same." "No," he agreed. "It's not. But sometimes not the same is still pretty good." Ellie considered this seriously, then went back to coloring. Sabrina felt something twist in her chest. When was the last time she'd had a conversation that simple? That honest? Every word she spoke was calculated, every interaction a negotiation. Even with her assistant, with people she'd known for years, she was always performing some version of herself that seemed strong enough to deserve her position. Her phone buzzed. Her assistant again. "Board members asking about your appearance schedule for the gala. Need to coordinate with PR." Sabrina typed back, "Tell them I'm handling it." Then she did something she hadn't done in 5 years. She turned her phone completely off. The man was helping Ellie put her crayons back in the box now, making a game of it. "Can you find the red one?" "That's right. How about blue?" "Perfect. You're so good at this." Ellie beamed. They stood to leave. 2. The man held his daughter's hand as they walked toward the door, and Sabrina watched them prepare to step back into whatever life they had outside this small, warm cafe that smelled like coffee and kindness. She didn't plan what happened next. Didn't think it through, just acted on instinct for the first time in recent memory. "Excuse me." The man turned. Up close, Sabrina could see the tiredness around his eyes, the cheap watch on his wrist, the careful way he positioned himself slightly in front of his daughter, like he was used to protecting her. "Yes?" Sabrina's mind went blank. She'd prepared for hostile boardrooms and investor meetings and press conferences that could make or break stock prices. She had no idea how to talk to a stranger in a cafe about nothing. She stopped, started again. Your daughter. She seems lovely. It was possibly the stupidest thing she'd ever said. The man's expression softened anyway. Thank you. She's my favorite person. Ellie giggled. I'm your only person, Daddy. That's why you're my favorite. He looked back at Sabrina, curious but not suspicious. I'm Noah, by the way. This is Ellie. Sabrina. They shook hands. His palm was calloused, warm, real. Are you having a rough day? Noah asked. The question was so direct, so unexpectedly kind, that Sabrina almost laughed. What makes you think that? You've been sitting here for 2 hours staring at a coffee cup. Either you're having a rough day or that's the most interesting coffee in the city. Maybe both. He smiled. I hope it gets better. Then he left, Ellie's hand in his, and Sabrina sat alone in the cafe wondering why she felt like she'd just let something important walk away. Butch. That night, Sabrina stood in her penthouse apartment looking out at the city lights and hating everything they represented. Success. Achievement. The view that came from climbing higher than everyone else and staying there alone. Her phone, turned back on now, was full of messages she didn't want to read. The board members circling, Marcus positioning himself as the reasonable alternative, investors asking careful questions about leadership stability. 4 days until the gala. 4 days to prove she wasn't the liability they all thought she was. She thought about Noah sitting on the sidewalk with his daughter, patient and present and unbothered by the world's opinion of where he should be. She thought about the way he'd looked at Sabrina like she was just another person having a bad day, not a CEO worth $800 million who could buy his life 1,000 times over. The idea came to her fully formed and completely insane. She grabbed her phone and called her assistant. I need you to find someone for me, Sabrina said. Noah Bennett. Probably lives in the city, has a 6-year-old daughter named Ellie. I don't know his exact address, but he was at Rosewood Cafe this afternoon around 3. Her assistant didn't even hesitate. What do you need? Everything. Work history, financial situation, family background. I need it by morning. Consider it done. Sabrina ended the call and looked back at the city, her reflection ghost-like in the glass. This was crazy. This was desperate. This was the only move she had left. The file arrived at 6 in the morning. Noah Bennett, 32, former architect who'd left his firm 3 years ago. Reason: his daughter's diagnosis with a congenital heart condition that required ongoing treatment and eventual surgery. Current employment: freelance drafting work, whatever he could do from home while managing Ellie's care schedule. Income: barely enough. Debt: significant, mostly medical. Family: none listed except Ellie. Mother of the child: no information, not in the picture. Sabrina read through it twice, coffee growing cold in her hand. He was exactly what she needed. More importantly, he was exactly what the board would believe. A struggling single father who needed help, who would accept a temporary arrangement out of necessity, who wouldn't have any ulterior motives because he existed in a completely different world from hers. The guilt came swift and sharp, but she pushed it down. This wasn't about manipulation. This was about survival. And if she could help him in the process, actually pay for his daughter's surgery, give him a financial cushion he desperately needed, then maybe it wasn't entirely selfish. She picked up her phone, put it down, picked it up again. The problem was simple. She had no idea how to make this offer without sounding like exactly the kind of person who would buy another human being's cooperation, which, she supposed, was exactly what she was about to do. Noah Bennett lived in a third-floor walk-up in a neighborhood that the city planners had been promising to revitalize for the past decade. Sabrina's driver stopped at the curb and looked at her in the rearview mirror like he was waiting for her to change her mind. I'll call when I'm ready, she said. The building smelled like someone's cooking and old carpet. Sabrina climbed the stairs in heels that were completely impractical for this, feeling more out of place than she had in years. Apartment 3C. She could hear a child's voice inside, bright and chattering. Sabrina knocked before she could reconsider. The voices stopped. Footsteps approached. The door opened and Noah stood there in sweatpants and a t-shirt that had a small stain near the collar, holding a spatula like he'd been interrupted mid-cooking. Recognition flickered across his face. Sabrina? From the cafe? Yes, I... She stopped. In every version of this conversation she'd rehearsed on the way over, she'd had a speech prepared. Professional. Reasonable. Mutually beneficial. Now, looking at this man in his home with his daughter calling, "Who is it, Daddy?" From somewhere behind him, all her words evaporated. "I need your help," she said. "And I think I can help you in return." Noah's expression shifted into something careful. "What kind of help?" "Can I come in? It's complicated." He hesitated. She could see him weighing risks, calculating what it meant to let a stranger into the space where his daughter lived. "Ellie," he called over his shoulder, "can you go play in your room for a minute? I need to talk to Miss Sabrina." "The lady from the cafe?" "Yes, sweetheart, just for a few minutes." Small footsteps retreated. A door closed. Noah stepped back and gestured Sabrina inside. The apartment was small, clean, filled with the kind of furniture that came from thrift stores and clearance sales. But there were drawings taped to the walls, Ellie's artwork, Sabrina assumed, and books stacked everywhere, and a warmth that her penthouse would never have, no matter how much money she spent on interior designers. "I looked you up," Noah said, not sitting down. "After you left the cafe. You're Sabrina Vale, the CEO." "Yes." "So when you say you need help, I'm guessing you don't mean moving furniture." Despite everything, Sabrina almost smiled. "No, it's more complicated than that," she told him. Not everything. She couldn't bring herself to admit just how pathetic her situation was. But enough. The board pressuring her to appear more stable. The family gala in 4 days. The fact that she needed someone to pretend to be her partner for one weekend, and she would pay him enough to cover his daughter's surgery, plus living expenses for a year. Noah listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. "Let me make sure I understand," he said finally. "You want to pay me to pretend we're together so your board of directors doesn't think you're too focused on work?" "Yes." "And in exchange, you'll pay for Ellie's surgery. And more. Whatever you need." "This is insane." "I know." "Why me?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" "Why me specifically? You could hire an actor. Someone who'd be more convincing. Someone from your world who'd know how to behave at these kinds of events." Sabrina looked at him, really looked at him, at the careful way he held himself, at the protective stance even now, at the sincerity in every word he spoke. "Because you're real," she said quietly. "And I'm tired of people who aren't." Noah rubbed his face with both hands. "I need to think about this." "I understand, but I need an answer by tomorrow morning. That's not a lot of time." "I don't have a lot of time." He walked to the window, looking out at a view that was nothing like Sabrina's but somehow seemed more honest. "If I do this, and I'm not saying I will, but if I do, we'd need ground rules." "Of course. Ellie's safety and privacy come first. Always. No press involving her, no photos, nothing that puts her in the spotlight." "Agreed." "And she deserves honesty. I won't lie to my daughter about who you are or what this arrangement is. Not completely. I'll tell her you're someone Daddy is helping for a little while." Sabrina felt something painful lodge in her chest. Even desperate, even offered more money than he'd probably seen in his entire life, Noah's first concern was his daughter's emotional well-being. "Anything else?" she asked. He turned back to face her. "Yeah, when this is over, we go back to our separate lives. Clean break, no complications." "That's the plan." "Plans and reality don't always match up." "They will this time," Sabrina said with more confidence than she felt. "This is a business arrangement, nothing more." Noah studied her face for a long moment, and Sabrina had the uncomfortable feeling he could see through every defense she'd carefully constructed. "I'll give you my answer tomorrow morning," he said. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. Sabrina would take it. Quote, the call came at 7 the next morning. "I'll do it," Noah said without preamble. "But I need the contract in writing, all of it. What you're paying, what the expectations are, how long this lasts, everything clear. I'll have my lawyer draw it up today." And I meet the lawyer. I'm not signing anything I don't fully understand. Fair enough. There was a pause. Then Noah said, Sabrina, I need you to understand something. I'm doing this for Ellie, for her surgery, for her future, not because I believe in fake relationships or think this is a good idea. I know. Do you? Because from where I'm standing, this whole thing feels like it could go wrong in about 100 different ways. It won't, Sabrina said. I won't let it. She could almost hear Noah's skeptical expression through the phone. Okay, what's next? We need to get you ready for the gala. That means clothes, backstory, coaching on how to handle my family, and the board members and the press. When do we start? Today. I'll send a car at noon. After she hung up, Sabrina sat in her office and wondered if she'd just made the best decision of her life or the worst. Probably both. The transformation of Noah Bennett began in the private suite of the most expensive men's store in the city. This is insane, Noah said, looking at the price tag on a suit jacket. I could pay rent for 3 months with this. You're not paying for it, Sabrina reminded him. She was sitting in a leather chair watching the tailor circle Noah with pins and measuring tape. And you need to look like you belong at this event. I don't belong at this event. That's the whole point. You belong anywhere I say you belong. Noah met her eyes in the mirror. Is that how you see the world? Everything bends to your will? Usually, yes. Must be lonely. The tailor cleared his throat uncomfortably. Sabrina realized she and Noah were having a completely different conversation than the one they were supposed to be having. The Navy would be good, she said, changing the subject. Classic. Not trying too hard. 3 hours later, Noah had 5 suits, a dozen shirts, shoes that cost more than his monthly grocery budget, and the expression of someone who'd accidentally wandered into someone else's life. I look ridiculous, he said, examining himself in the fitting room mirror. Sabrina stood behind him, making small adjustments to his collar. You look exactly right. I look like I'm playing dress-up. Everyone at that gala is playing dress-up. You're just more honest about it. Noah turned to face her, and suddenly the space felt too small. They were standing closer than necessary, close enough that Sabrina could see the exact color of his eyes, brown with small flecks of gold, and the tiny scar above his left eyebrow. Why does this matter so much to you? Noah asked quietly. The company, the board approval, all of it. What are you actually fighting for? No one had asked her that in years, maybe ever. It's all I have, Sabrina said. The company. My father built it, and I rebuilt it, and if I lose it, I lose the only thing I've ever been good at. You really believe that? Yes. Then you have a much smaller imagination than I thought. Before Sabrina could respond, the tailor returned with the final alterations marked and the moment dissolved. But Noah's words stayed with her long after they left the store. They spent the next 2 days preparing. Sabrina's PR team coached Noah on how to handle reporters, what to say when asked about their relationship, how to deflect questions he didn't want to answer. Her assistant created a detailed backstory, how they met, how long they'd been together, what Noah did for work. We met at a charity auction, Sabrina explained, reading from the prepared notes. You bid on a weekend renovation project for a local school. I was impressed by your commitment to the community. Did I win the bid? No, but I asked you to coffee afterward to discuss your design ideas. Noah shook his head, smiling despite himself. This is the most elaborate lie I've ever told. It's not a lie if we both know it's performance, Sabrina said. Pretty sure that's exactly what a lie is. They were in Sabrina's penthouse now, practicing their story while Ellie was at school. Noah had barely reacted when he first walked in, but Sabrina saw him taking in the space, the floor-to-ceiling windows, the furniture that looked expensive because it was, the complete absence of anything personal. You don't have any photos, he said suddenly. What? Photos. Of family, friends, vacations, anything that shows your life outside work. Sabrina looked around her own apartment like she was seeing it for the first time. He was right. The walls were bare except for abstract art her designer had chosen. No memories visible anywhere. I don't really do vacations, she said. What about family? My parents are dead. I have cousins I don't like and business associates I tolerate. That's bleak. That's honest. Noah walked to the window, looking out at the view that had cost Sabrina $8 million. Ellie asked about you this morning. Sabrina's heart did something unexpected. What did she say? She wanted to know if you were my girlfriend. I told her no, that you were someone I was helping with a project. How did she take it? She asked if you liked macaroni and cheese. Noah glanced back at Sabrina. Apparently that's her measure of good people. Despite everything, Sabrina laughed. I haven't had macaroni and cheese in probably 15 years. She thinks you should come for dinner sometime and try hers. The offer hung in the air between them, casual and terrifying. That would be inappropriate, Sabrina said. This is a business arrangement. Right, of course. Noah turned back to the window. Just thought you should know she's already getting attached to the idea of you. Then you need to make sure she understands this is temporary. I have. Repeatedly. She's 6. Temporary doesn't really compute. Sabrina felt guilt twist in her stomach but pushed it away. She'd been clear from the beginning about what this was. Noah had agreed to the terms. If his daughter got confused, that was his responsibility to manage. Wasn't it? We should practice the gala entrance, she said, changing the subject. The photographers will be aggressive, and I need you to look comfortable. They spent the next hour choreographing something that should have been natural. How to walk together, where to place their hands, how to smile like they actually enjoyed each other's company. It was the strangest thing Sabrina had ever done. Your hand is shaking, Noah said at one point. She pulled away immediately. No, it's not. Yes, it is. Are you nervous? I don't get nervous. Everyone gets nervous. Not about things they can control. Noah studied her with that direct, unsettling gaze of his. Sabrina, you can't control everything. Eventually, something will surprise you. I don't like surprises. I'm starting to realize that. The day before the gala, Noah brought Ellie to meet Sabrina. It hadn't been part of the plan, but Noah had insisted. If we're going to do this, if I'm going to stand beside you in front of all those people and pretend we're together, then you need to meet the person I'm doing this for. So Sabrina found herself sitting in her office, neutral territory, while a 6-year-old girl with braids and bright eyes examined her like a particularly interesting science experiment. You're really tall, Ellie said. It's mostly the shoes. And you're pretty. Thank you. Daddy says you run a big company. I do. What does your company do? Sabrina opened her mouth to give the standard PR answer about vertical integration and market positioning, then stopped. We make things that people need. Medical equipment, technology for hospitals, supplies for schools. That's good, Ellie said seriously. Making things people need is important. Yes, it is. Daddy makes things too. He draws buildings. I know. He's really good at it. Do you want to see? Before Sabrina could answer, Ellie was pulling a crumpled piece of paper from her backpack, a detailed architectural sketch of what looked like a community center, complete with annotations and measurements. The drawing was beautiful, skilled, the work of someone who had real talent. Your dad drew this? Last week. He said maybe someday someone will build it for real. Sabrina looked at Noah, who was standing by the door looking uncomfortable. You're very good, he shrugged. It's a hobby now. Pays better to do drafting work for other people's projects than dream about my own. There was something bitter in his voice, something resigned. Daddy had to stop being an architect when I got sick, Ellie said matter-of-factly. Because he had to take care of me and my heart is expensive to fix. Ellie, Noah said quietly, we talked about this. It's okay, Daddy. I know it's true. Miss Caroline at school says telling the truth is always better than pretending things are different. Sabrina felt something crack open in her chest. This little girl, 6 years old with a heart condition and a father who'd given up his career to save her, had more emotional honesty than Sabrina had managed in 3 decades. Your heart is going to be fixed soon, Sabrina said. I promise. Ellie looked at her seriously. Daddy says promises are really important. You shouldn't make them if you don't mean them. I mean it. Okay then. Ellie smiled, satisfied. Do you really not like macaroni and cheese? I don't know. I haven't tried it in a long time. You should come have dinner with us. I make really good macaroni and cheese. Daddy helps, but I do most of it. Sabrina glanced at Noah, who looked like he wanted to apologize for his daughter's directness. But Sabrina found herself saying, maybe after this weekend, when things are less complicated. Promise? Ellie, Noah started. Yes, Sabrina said. I promise. Ellie beamed, and Sabrina realized she'd just made a commitment she had no idea how to keep. After they left, Sabrina sat alone in her office and wondered what the hell she was doing. This was supposed to be simple, a transaction. Noah pretended to be her fiancé, she paid for his daughter's surgery, everyone got what they needed and walked away clean. Except it wasn't feeling simple anymore. It was feeling dangerously, terrifyingly real. The night before the gala, Sabrina couldn't sleep. She stood at her window looking out at the city and thinking about Noah sitting on a sidewalk with his daughter, patient and present. About the way he looked at her like she was just a person, not a CEO or a billionaire or a commodity to be managed. About the way Ellie had trusted her promise without question. Her phone buzzed. A text from Noah. Ellie can't sleep, says she's excited for tomorrow. Tried to explain you and I aren't actually going together, but she's decided we are and there's no talking her out of it. Sabrina smiled despite herself and typed back. She's very determined. Wonder where she gets it from. Not from me. No? I'm practical. She's optimistic. Completely different, if you say so. Sabrina hesitated, then wrote, Are you nervous about tomorrow? The response took longer this time. Terrified. You? I don't get nervous. Right, I forgot. You just control everything, exactly. Sabrina? Yes? Thank you. For Ellie's surgery. For giving me a chance to help her. Even if this whole thing is crazy, even if I'm not sure it's the right choice. Thank you. Sabrina stared at the words on her screen and felt something shift in her carefully controlled world. You're welcome, she typed. Get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be a long day. You too. She didn't sleep, but for the first time in years, the sleeplessness felt like anticipation instead of dread. Tomorrow, she would walk into that gala with Noah beside her and prove to the board that she was exactly what they wanted her to be. Stable, settled, safe. Tomorrow, everything would change. She just didn't know yet if that was what she actually wanted. The car arrived at 6 in the evening, black and polished and so obviously expensive that Noah felt ridiculous climbing into it. The driver nodded at him like picking up struggling single fathers in third-floor walk-ups was a normal part of his Friday routine. Miss Vale asked me to bring you to her residence first, the driver said. She'll meet you there before the event. Noah adjusted his tie for the 10th time and tried not to think about how much the suit he was wearing cost. Beside him on the seat was the contract his lawyer had reviewed, 20 pages of legal language that basically said Sabrina would pay for Ellie's surgery plus $200,000 in exchange for Noah pretending to be her partner for exactly 4 public appearances, starting with tonight's gala. His lawyer had called it airtight. His conscience called it something else entirely. The penthouse elevator required a key card to reach the top floor. When the doors opened directly into Sabrina's apartment, Noah stepped out into a space that felt more like a museum than a home. You're early, Sabrina said, emerging from what he assumed was her bedroom. That's good. We need to... She stopped mid-sentence. Noah had seen Sabrina in business suits and designer clothes that probably cost more than his car. He'd seen her tired and frustrated and vulnerable in ways she probably didn't mean to show. But he'd never seen her like this. The dress was deep emerald green, fitted in a way that was elegant rather than obvious, with a neckline that suggested wealth and taste without trying to prove anything. Her hair was pulled back but softer than usual, and she wore jewelry that caught the light when she moved. You look terrified, she said. You look beautiful. The words came out before Noah could stop them, honest and unfiltered, and he watched something flicker across Sabrina's face that might have been surprise or might have been pleasure or might have been both. Thank you, she said quietly. Then, more businesslike, the tie is wrong. What's wrong with it? Nothing's wrong with it. It's just too safe. You look like you're trying to blend in. I am trying to blend in. Sabrina crossed the space between them and reached for his tie, loosening it with quick, efficient movements. That's the problem. If you look like you're trying to fit in, everyone will know you don't belong. You need to look like you don't care whether you fit in or not. Her hands were steady against his collar, adjusting and retying with the kind of casual intimacy that should have been awkward between two people who barely knew each other. But somehow it wasn't. "How do you do that?" Noah asked. "Look like you don't care what people think when your entire future depends on what they think." "Practice. Years of it." She stepped back to examine her work. "Better. Now you look like someone who chose that tie deliberately, not someone who's hoping no one notices him." "I'm not sure that's a good thing." "Tonight it is." Sabrina picked up a small clutch from the table. "Ready?" "No." "Perfect. Neither am I." The ride to the gala took 30 minutes through traffic that parted for their car like Sabrina's wealth could physically move obstacles. Noah spent most of it staring out the window and trying to remember the backstory they'd rehearsed. They met at a charity auction. He bid on a school renovation project. She asked him to coffee. They'd been seeing each other for 3 months, keeping it quiet because Sabrina valued her privacy and Noah was still navigating single fatherhood. The relationship was serious, but not rushed. They were taking things slow, being responsible. It was a good story. Believable. The kind of thing that would satisfy the board without giving the press too much to speculate about. It was also complete fiction. "Stop fidgeting," Sabrina said. "I'm not fidgeting." "You've checked your phone 4 times in the last 10 minutes. Noah looked down at his phone where Ellie's babysitter had sent another update. "Having dinner now. She's asking when you'll be home." "I told her late, but she wants to know if Miss Sabrina will come visit tomorrow." "Ellie's fine," Noah said, more to himself than to Sabrina. "Mrs. Chen is great with her. She's been babysitting for us for 2 years. Ellie loves her." "But you're still worried." "I'm always worried. That's what parents do." Sabrina was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "My mother died when I was 8. My father threw himself into work afterward. Built the company into something massive, like if he made it big enough it could fill the space she left. It didn't work, but he tried anyway." Noah looked at her, surprised by the sudden vulnerability. "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was a long time ago." She straightened her dress, her moment of openness closing like a door. "I'm just saying I understand what it's like to have a parent who's terrified of failing you." "Is that what I am? Terrified?" "Aren't you?" Before Noah could answer, the car slowed. Through the window, he could see lights and photographers and people in evening wear, climbing the steps of a building that looked like it had been designed to intimidate. "We're here," Sabrina said unnecessarily. The driver opened her door first. Sabrina stepped out into a barrage of camera flashes and voices calling her name, and Noah watched her transform. The woman who'd just shared a piece of her history disappeared, replaced by someone who looked completely comfortable being the center of attention. Then she turned back to the car and extended her hand. Noah took it and stepped into the chaos. The photographers converged like they'd been waiting for this exact moment. Questions flew from every direction, rapid fire and overlapping. "Miss Vale, who's your date?" "Sabrina, is this a new relationship?" "Can we get a photo together?" "How long have you been seeing each other?" Sabrina's hand tightened on Noah's, a silent instruction to stay close, and she smiled at the cameras with practiced ease. "Everyone, this is Noah Bennett. Noah, say hello to the people who make my life interesting." "Hello?" Noah said, and immediately felt stupid. But Sabrina laughed like he'd said something charming and guided him toward the entrance. The photographers kept shouting questions, but she ignored them with the kind of selective attention that came from years of practice. "That wasn't so bad," she murmured as they cleared the press line. "You're joking, right?" "That was the easy part." The gala itself was held in a ballroom that probably cost more to rent for one night than Noah's annual income. Everything gleamed. The chandeliers, the marble floors, the jewelry worn by women who looked like they'd been born knowing how to navigate spaces like this. Noah felt immediately, profoundly out of place. "Stay close to me," Sabrina said quietly. "Let me do most of the talking. If someone asks you a direct question, keep your answer short and confident. Don't apologize. Don't over-explain." "What if I don't know the answer?" "Make something up. Half the people here are doing the same thing." A waiter appeared with champagne. Sabrina took 2 glasses and handed one to Noah, then raised hers in a small toast. "To getting through the next 4 hours without disaster." "That's a low bar?" "It's a realistic bar." They'd barely taken a sip when the first board member approached. Richard Pemberton, the kind-eyed man who delivered the ultimatum about Sabrina's stability, looked genuinely pleased to see them. "Sabrina, you look lovely, and you must be Noah." They shook hands. Richard's grip was firm, assessing. "I've heard wonderful things," Richard said, which was a polite way of saying he'd had Noah investigated. "Sabrina tells me you're an architect?" "I was," Noah said. "Mostly freelance drafting now." "Interesting career change." "Family circumstances changed my priorities." Richard nodded like this was exactly the answer he'd hoped for. "Nothing wrong with that. A man who knows what matters is worth more than any resume." He turned to Sabrina. "I'm glad you brought him. It's good to see you with someone who keeps you grounded." After Richard moved on, Sabrina exhaled slowly. One down. "How many more?" "Too many to count." The next hour was a blur of introductions and small talk and questions disguised as friendly conversation. Noah shook hands with investors and board members and Vail family relatives who all wanted to know where he'd come from and what his intentions were, and whether he understood the kind of pressure that came with being attached to someone like Sabrina. He smiled and answered and tried not to let his panic show. Sabrina handled it with the kind of practiced grace that came from living her entire life in this world. She laughed at jokes that weren't funny, complimented dresses that looked identical to every other dress in the room, and steered conversations away from anything too personal with surgical precision. But Noah noticed the way her smile never quite reached her eyes, the way her hand found his whenever someone new approached, like she needed the anchor, the way she'd take a breath before speaking, composing herself into whatever version of Sabrina Vail the situation required. It was exhausting to watch. He couldn't imagine what it was like to live. "I need air," Sabrina said finally, after the 7th or 8th conversation with people whose names Noah had already forgotten. "Come with me." She led him through a side door onto a balcony that overlooked the city. The noise from the ballroom faded to a muffled hum. Out here, the air was cool and clean and real. Sabrina leaned against the railing and closed her eyes. "You okay?" Noah asked. "Fine. Just needed a minute." She opened her eyes. "How are you holding up?" "I feel like I'm in a play where everyone else got the script except me." "That's basically what this is." "Do you always feel like this at these events?" Sabrina considered the question. "I used to feel something. Pressure, mostly. The need to prove I belonged. But after a while, you stop feeling anything. You just perform." "That sounds lonely." "It's efficient." Noah turned to face her fully. "Sabrina, can I ask you something?" "Depends on the question. Why do you care so much what they think? The board, the investors, all of it. You've already proven you can run the company. The numbers speak for themselves. So why does it matter if they approve of your personal life?" For a long moment, Sabrina didn't answer. Then she said, "Because if they take the company away from me, I have nothing else." "That's not true." "Isn't it? I have no family I actually like. No friends outside of people I pay to be around me. No hobbies, no interests, no life outside that building." She gestured vaguely toward where Vail Industries headquarters stood somewhere in the skyline. "The company is all I have. It's all I am. So yes, I care what they think, because losing it means losing myself." Noah wanted to tell her she was wrong, that she was more than her job, more than her success, more than the empire she'd built. But he could see in her face that she wouldn't believe him. "My wife left when Ellie was 6 months old," he said instead. Sabrina looked at him, surprised by the sudden confession. "She couldn't handle it," Noah continued. "The diagnosis, the medical appointments, the uncertainty. She said she wasn't ready to be a mother to a sick child. Just walked away, and I haven't heard from her since." He stared out at the city. "For a long time I thought I'd failed. Failed as a husband, failed as a provider, failed at building the kind of life I'd always imagined. But then I realized something." "What?" "The life I imagined wasn't the life I had. And the life I had, messy and hard and nothing like the plan, was still worth showing up for every day." He looked at Sabrina. "I'm not saying your company doesn't matter, but maybe it's not the only thing that gets to define you." Sabrina held his gaze for a long moment. Then she said, "We should get back inside before people start talking." "They're already talking. That's why we're here." "Fair point." But she didn't move toward the door. They stood together in the cool evening air, and Noah realized this was the first honest conversation they'd had. Everything else had been negotiation and planning and careful performance. This was just two people admitting the truth about their broken places. It felt dangerous and important and completely unscripted. "Thank you," Sabrina said quietly, "for doing this, for being here when you could have said no. You're paying me a lot of money to be here. Still, you could have said no." Before Noah could respond, the balcony door opened and a man stepped out. He was maybe 40, wearing a suit that cost more than Noah's car, with the kind of easy confidence that came from never having to worry about money. "Sabrina," the man said, "I thought I might find you hiding out here." Noah felt Sabrina stiffen beside him. "Marcus," she said, her voice carefully neutral, "I'm not hiding, just getting some air." Marcus Vale, because of course this was the cousin who wanted to steal Sabrina's company, smiled at Noah like they were old friends. "You must be the mysterious Noah Bennett. I've heard so much about you." "Funny," Noah said. "I haven't heard anything about you." The smile didn't waver, but something sharp flickered in Marcus's eyes. Sabrina likes to keep her personal and professional lives separate. Smart strategy, really. Less complicated when things inevitably fall apart. "Things aren't going to fall apart," Sabrina said. "Of course not. I'm sure this is completely different from all the other times you've tried to convince the board you have everything under control." Marcus turned back to Noah. "Tell me, how long have you two actually been seeing each other?" Noah remembered Sabrina's coaching. Keep answers short, sound confident, don't over-explain. "Long enough," he said. "Fascinating answer. Very specific." Marcus leaned against the railing. "I looked into your background. Former architect, now doing freelance drafting, financial troubles, a daughter with expensive medical needs. It must be quite convenient to have someone like Sabrina suddenly interested in you." "Marcus," Sabrina's voice had gone cold. "That's enough. I'm just making conversation, getting to know the man who's apparently important enough to bring to the family gala." He looked at Noah. "Because that is interesting, isn't it? Sabrina's been running this company for 5 years and never brought anyone to these events. Then suddenly, 4 days before a critical board vote, she shows up with a struggling single father who needs exactly the kind of help she can provide. What a remarkable coincidence." Noah felt anger rise in his chest, but forced it down. Marcus was baiting him, trying to get a reaction that would prove this whole thing was fake. "I don't believe in coincidences," Noah said carefully. "I believe in people who show up when it matters. Sabrina does that. You want to question my background or my motives? Fine. But don't question whether she deserves to run her own company just because she's choosing to share her life with someone." Something shifted in Marcus's expression. Surprise, maybe, or respect. He'd expected Noah to fold. "Well said," Marcus said after a moment. "Maybe you're exactly what she needs after all." He pushed off the railing. "Enjoy the rest of your evening. I'm sure we'll be seeing much more of each other." After he left, Sabrina exhaled shakily. "That was my cousin," she said unnecessarily. "I figured. He seems lovely. He's a predator. Always has been. He's been waiting for me to fail since the day I took over the company. He's not going to get what he wants." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do. Because you're not going to fail." Noah took her hand without thinking about it. "Come on, let's go back inside and show everyone exactly how stable you are." Sabrina looked down at their joined hands, then back up at Noah's face. "This is starting to feel less like acting." "I know. That's a problem. I know that too." But neither of them let go. The rest of the evening unfolded in a strange mix of performance and reality. Noah stayed close to Sabrina, played the part of devoted partner, smiled at people who clearly didn't believe he belonged in their world. And maybe he didn't. But he was there anyway. Dinner was served at long tables decorated with flowers that probably cost more than Noah's monthly rent. He found himself seated between Sabrina and a woman named Patricia, who served on the Vale Industries board and wanted to know everything about his relationship with Sabrina. "How did you know she was the one?" Patricia asked, direct and unashamed. Noah glanced at Sabrina, who was deep in conversation with the board member on her other side. "I didn't know right away," he said, surprised to find himself telling something close to the truth. "But there was this moment when I realized she saw the world differently than anyone I'd ever met. She's so focused on being strong that she forgets it's okay to need people sometimes. And you don't mind that? The constant work, the pressure she's under? Everyone has pressure. Hers just looks different than mine. Patricia studied him with sharp eyes. You're good for her. I can see it already. She seems more settled tonight than I've seen her in years. After dinner came speeches and toasts and a charity auction that raised obscene amounts of money for causes Noah suspected half the attendees didn't actually care about. Through it all, Sabrina maintained her composure, her smile, her perfect performance. Only Noah seemed to notice the tiny crack in her facade, the way her hand trembled slightly when she bid on an auction item, the way she'd glance toward the exit like she was calculating how long until she could escape. During the dancing portion of the evening, Sabrina pulled Noah onto the floor. I don't really dance, he said. Neither do I, but it's expected. She placed his hand on her waist and took his other hand in hers, and they moved together in something that was technically dancing but felt more like structured swaying. You handled Marcus well, Sabrina said quietly. He was testing me. Everyone here is testing you, testing us. I know. How am I doing? Better than I expected. She met his eyes. You're a good liar. I'm not lying about everything. What are you lying about? Noah thought about how her hand felt in his, about the way she'd looked earlier when she admitted the company was all she had, about Ellie asking when Miss Sabrina would come visit again. I'm not sure anymore, he said honestly. The song changed. Couples swirled around them and practiced elegant movements. Sabrina and Noah just held on to each other and tried to pretend this was simple. After tonight, there are 3 more appearances, Sabrina said. A board dinner next week, a business conference the week after, and the company anniversary gala at the end of the month. Then the contract is fulfilled, and you can go back to your life. Right, the plan. We should probably start thinking about the exit strategy. How we'll announce the breakup, what story we'll tell. Seems a little early for that. It's never too early to plan for the end. Sabrina's voice was flat, matter of fact. That's how you avoid getting hurt. Noah pulled back slightly to look at her. Is that really how you want to live? Always planning for everything to fall apart? It's kept me safe this long. Safe isn't the same as happy. I'll settle for safe. The song ended. They separated and returned to their table, where dessert was being served and conversations continued in comfortable, wealthy rhythms. Noah checked his phone again. Mrs. Chen had sent a photo of Ellie asleep on the couch, clutching the stuffed elephant Noah had won for her at a street fair 3 years ago. His chest ached with missing her. You can leave if you need to, Sabrina said, noticing. We've made our appearance. People have seen us together. The important parts are done. Are you leaving? I have to stay until the end. It's expected. Then I'm staying too. Noah, you don't have to. I know I don't have to. I'm choosing to. Something complicated crossed Sabrina's face. Then she nodded and turned back to the table. The final hour of the gala dragged. Noah made conversation with strangers, smiled until his face hurt, and watched Sabrina navigate her world with the kind of practiced exhaustion that came from doing this her entire life. When it finally ended, when the last guest said goodbye and the photographers had gotten their final shots of Sabrina and Noah leaving together, they collapsed into the back of her car in mutual relief. That was horrible, Noah said. That was successful. Those aren't mutually exclusive. Sabrina kicked off her heels and leaned her head back against the seat. Thank you for tonight, for not running away when Marcus cornered us, for dancing even though you clearly hated it, for staying when you wanted to leave. You're welcome. They rode in silence for a while. Then Sabrina said, Your daughter asked if I would come visit. You don't have to. I know that's not part of the arrangement. What if I wanted to? Noah looked at her, surprised. Do you? I don't know, maybe. She seems like a good kid. She is, but she's also 6 and doesn't understand that this is temporary. If you come over, if you spend time with her, she's going to get attached. Would that be so bad? Yes, because when this ends, when we go back to our separate lives like we planned, she's going to be hurt. Sabrina was quiet for a long moment. You're right. It's a bad idea. Okay. I'll send her something instead. A gift or something. Kids like gifts, right? Sabrina, you don't have to. I want to. Her voice was firm. She asked about me. I should acknowledge that. The car pulled up to Noah's building. The driver started to get out, but Sabrina waved him off. I'll walk you up, she said. You don't need to do that. I know. They climbed the 3 flights in silence, Sabrina still barefoot and carrying her heels. When they reached Noah's door, they both stopped. Tonight went well, Sabrina said. The board members I spoke to seemed satisfied. The press coverage will be positive. We did what we needed to do. Yeah. So why does it feel strange? Noah knew why. Because somewhere between the scripted conversations and the practiced smiles, something real had happened. Something neither of them had planned for. Because we're people, he said, not characters in the story we're telling. Sabrina looked at him with those sharp, careful eyes that saw too much. This is still just an arrangement. You understand that, right? Of course. Good, because I can't afford for it to be anything else. I know. But when she left, Noah stood in his doorway and wondered if either of them actually believed that anymore. Inside, Mrs. Chen was dozing on the couch. Noah paid her, thanked her, and carried Ellie to bed without waking her. She stirred just slightly when he tucked her in, mumbling something about macaroni and cheese and whether Miss Sabrina liked the color purple. Noah sat on the edge of her bed and watched her sleep and tried to remember why he'd agreed to this arrangement in the first place. The money, of course. Ellie's surgery. The chance to give her a future without medical debt hanging over them. But sitting there in the dark, listening to his daughter breathe, Noah realized he'd miscalculated something important. He'd thought the risk was getting caught, thought the danger was someone figuring out this relationship wasn't real. He hadn't considered the possibility that it might become real anyway, whether he wanted it to or not. His phone buzzed. A text from Sabrina. Thank you again for tonight. The contract payment for the first appearance will be transferred tomorrow. 3 more events and this will all be over. Noah stared at the message for a long time before responding, looking forward to it. It was the most dishonest thing he'd said all night. The package arrived 3 days later. Noah was making breakfast when the delivery driver knocked, carrying a box wrapped in expensive paper that had Ellie's name written in careful handwriting. Inside was a purple art set with more supplies than any 6-year-old could possibly need. Watercolors, colored pencils, sketch pads, brushes in 6 different sizes, and a note that said, "For someone who makes really good macaroni and cheese." Ellie held the note like it was treasure. Miss Sabrina remembered I like purple. Looks like it, Noah said, watching his daughter sort through the supplies with reverent hands. Can we call her and say thank you? I'll text her later. But Daddy, that's not polite. You always say thank you notes are important. She was right, of course. Noah had drilled manners into Ellie since she was old enough to understand them. But calling Sabrina felt dangerous somehow, like crossing a line they'd carefully drawn between performance and reality. How about you draw her a picture instead? Noah suggested. We can mail it to her office. Ellie considered this seriously, then nodded. Okay, but it has to be really good because she gave me really good art stuff. She spent the rest of the morning at the kitchen table, working on a drawing with the kind of focused intensity that always amazed Noah. When she finally held it up for his approval, he saw she'd drawn 3 stick figures, one tall with long hair labeled Miss Sabrina, one medium-sized labeled Daddy, and one small labeled Me. They were all holding hands. Noah's chest tightened. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Do you think she'll like it? I think she'll love it. That night, after Ellie was asleep, Noah sat at the same kitchen table and stared at the drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands. A family that didn't exist except in the imagination of a 6-year-old who didn't understand that some connections were meant to be temporary. He should have said no to Sabrina's offer, should have found another way to pay for Ellie's surgery, should have protected his daughter from getting attached to someone who'd explicitly said she couldn't afford to be anything more than an arrangement. His phone buzzed. A message from Sabrina. Did the package arrive? Noah typed back, Yes, Ellie is over the moon, thank you. I wasn't sure what 6-year-olds liked. The store associate said art supplies were safe. They're perfect. She made you a thank you drawing. A long pause. Then, she didn't have to do that. Try telling her that. She takes thank you notes very seriously. Another pause. I'd like to see it. Noah photographed the drawing and sent it before he could overthink it. Watched the dots appear that meant Sabrina was typing, disappear, appear again. Finally, I'm the tall one? You're wearing heels in her mental image of you. Smart kid. Noah stared at his phone, trying to decide if he should say what he was thinking. Then he typed it anyway. She drew us as a family. I thought you should know that's how she sees this. This time the pause was longer. When Sabrina finally responded, her message was careful. We should talk about that, about making sure she understands the boundaries. I know. I'll handle it. Noah, I don't want to hurt her. Then maybe we should end this now, before it gets more complicated. He sent it and immediately regretted it. They had 3 more appearances in the contract. Ending early meant giving up the money for Ellie's surgery, meant Sabrina facing the board alone, meant both of them failing at the one thing they'd agreed to do. Sabrina's response came quickly. Is that what you want? I don't know what I want anymore. The typing dots appeared and disappeared 3 times before her next message came through. The board dinner is in 4 days. After that, we can reevaluate. See if this is still working. Okay. Neither of them said what they were both thinking, that it was already too late to reevaluate, that whatever this had started as, it had shifted into something neither of them knew how to control. The board dinner took place at a restaurant so exclusive it didn't have a sign. Sabrina's assistant had sent Noah the address along with detailed instructions about dress code and arrival time and where to meet Sabrina beforehand. Noah showed up 15 minutes early and found Sabrina already there, sitting alone at the bar nursing a drink she clearly wasn't enjoying. You're here, she said, looking relieved. I thought maybe you'd changed your mind. I said I'd be here. People say a lot of things. She finished her drink and stood. Ready? Do I look ready? She studied him for a moment, the navy suit they'd bought together, the tie he'd learned to knot properly, the watch she'd sent him last week with a note that said his old one didn't fit the image they were creating. You look perfect. Stop worrying. I can't help it. Last time I had dinner with board members, your cousin basically called me a gold digger. Marcus calls everyone something. It's his primary skill. Sabrina adjusted Noah's collar even though it didn't need adjusting. Tonight will be different. Smaller group, more intimate. Just 5 board members and their spouses. You'll be fine. You keep saying that like you believe it. I'm trying to convince both of us. The private dining room was smaller than Noah expected, which somehow made it worse. 5 board members meant 10 people total, and in a space this intimate, there was nowhere to hide. Richard Pemberton greeted them warmly, introducing Noah to his wife Margaret, who had kind eyes and asked immediately about Ellie. She's wonderful, Noah said, surprised by the genuine interest. 6 years old, and convinced she's going to be an artist when she grows up. Sabrina mentioned she's been dealing with some health challenges, Margaret said carefully. Noah glanced at Sabrina, who gave him a small nod. They'd agreed he could share basic information about Ellie's condition, just enough to explain why he'd left architecture. She has a congenital heart defect, Noah said. We're scheduled for surgery in 2 months. The prognosis is good, but it's been a long road getting here. Margaret touched his arm gently. That must have been terrifying, being a single parent through something like that. Some days more than others. The other board members were less warm but no less curious. They asked questions about Noah's background, his work, how he and Sabrina managed to find time together given their different schedules. Noah answered carefully, sticking to the script they'd rehearsed, trying not to notice how Sabrina's hand found his under the table whenever someone's question got too pointed. Dinner was served in courses that kept coming, small plates of things Noah couldn't pronounce, each one more elaborately arranged than the last. He ate carefully, watching the other guests for cues about which fork to use, trying not to embarrass himself. Halfway through the meal, a board member named Catherine asked Sabrina about the upcoming merger with the medical supply company. The question was technical, detailed, clearly designed to test whether Sabrina had actually prepared or if she was too distracted by her new relationship to focus on business. Sabrina answered without hesitation, launching into an explanation of market positioning and supply chain integration that made even Noah's eyes glaze over. But the board members nodded, satisfied, and Catherine smiled like Sabrina had passed some kind of test. I told you she could handle both, Richard said, raising his glass. Personal life and professional excellence aren't mutually exclusive. Everyone drank to that. Noah caught Sabrina's eye across the table and saw the relief there, quickly hidden. After dinner came coffee and dessert, and the part of the evening where people relaxed and conversations drifted from business to personal topics. Noah found himself talking to Margaret about single parenting, while Sabrina discussed quarterly projections with Richard at the other end of the table. She seems different with you, Margaret said quietly. More settled. You think so? I've known Sabrina since she was 22, when she first started working at her father's company. She's always been brilliant, but wound so tight I worried she'd snap. Tonight she seems calmer, like she's not carrying everything alone anymore. Noah didn't know what to say to that. The whole thing was an act, a carefully constructed performance designed to make the board feel better about their investment. But sitting here watching Sabrina laugh at something Richard said, her shoulders actually relaxed for once, Noah wondered if maybe the performance had become real somewhere along the way. The evening wound down around 10. The board members said their goodbyes, each one making a point to shake Noah's hand and tell him how glad they were to have met him. You're good for her, Richard said, pulling Noah aside for a moment. I can see it already. She trusts you. That's not something Sabrina gives easily. I'm just trying not to let her down. None of us want to let her down. We just want to make sure she's taken care of. Richard's expression turned serious. The board votes next month on some structural changes. Having you in her life, having stability, that matters more than you might think. After he left, Noah stood in the restaurant's entrance and tried to process what Richard had just told him. The board was voting on something that required Sabrina to appear stable and settled and capable of balancing her personal and professional life. Ready to go? Sabrina appeared at his elbow, looking tired but pleased. Richard just told me there's a vote next month about structural changes. Sabrina's expression shifted. He said that? Yes. What is he talking about? She was quiet for a moment, then sighed. The board is voting on whether to restructure the company's leadership. They want to add a co-CEO position. Someone to share the burden, they say. Someone to provide oversight. But really, they want to limit your power. Basically, yes. If the vote goes through, Marcus becomes co-CEO. We share authority over every major decision. Within a year, he'll have positioned himself to push me out entirely. Noah stared at her. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because it didn't seem relevant to our arrangement. You're here to make me look stable, not to get involved in corporate politics. Sabrina, this is your entire future. How is that not relevant? Because there's nothing you can do about it. I need to prove I'm stable and competent and capable of running this company alone. That's what tonight was about. That's what all of this is about. They stood in the restaurant entrance while valets brought cars and other diners passed by, and Noah realized just how much pressure Sabrina was actually under. This wasn't just about appearances. This was about her entire life's work being threatened by people who thought she needed supervision. I'm sorry, he said. I didn't understand how serious this was. Now you do. Still want to stick around for 2 more appearances? Yes. Why? Noah thought about Ellie's drawing, about 3 stick figures holding hands, about the way Sabrina had looked tonight when she laughed at Richard's joke, actually relaxed for once instead of performing relaxation. Because you deserve better than having to fight these battles alone, he said. Something complicated crossed Sabrina's face. Then she nodded, and they walked to her car in silence. The ride back to Noah's apartment was quiet. Sabrina stared out the window at the city passing by, and Noah watched her try to hold everything together with sheer force of will. Can I ask you something? He said finally. Depends. When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Not because it was strategic or necessary or good for the company, just because it made you happy. Sabrina thought about it for a long time. I don't remember. That's sad. That's realistic. Those aren't the same thing. The car pulled up to Noah's building. Before he could get out, Sabrina said, Wait. What's wrong? Nothing, She stopped, started again. Ellie's drawing, the one she made. Can I keep it? Noah looked at her carefully. Why? Because no one's ever drawn me as part of their family before. Even if it's just a kid who doesn't understand what's real and what's pretend, I'd like to keep it. There was something raw in her voice, something vulnerable that Noah had only caught glimpses of before. He pulled out his phone and called up the photo he'd taken. "I'll bring you the original," he said, "at the next event." "Thank you." He was halfway to his door when she called after him. "Noah?" He turned back. "Tonight went well," Sabrina said. "Really well. The board members were impressed. Richard seemed genuinely happy for me. We're doing the right thing here." "Are we?" "Yes. We have to be." She said it like she was trying to convince herself. The next morning, Noah got a call from Ellie's cardiologist. "We've had a surgery slot open up," Dr. Martinez said. 3 weeks from now instead of 2 months. I know it's sudden, but the sooner we can operate, the better her long-term prognosis." Noah sat down heavily. 3 weeks. I know that doesn't give you much time to prepare, but we'll take it. Whatever you need, we'll make it work. After he hung up, Noah sat at his kitchen table and tried to process what this meant. 3 weeks until Ellie's surgery. 3 weeks to make sure everything was in place, the hospital, the payment, the recovery plan. 3 weeks that would end right before his final contracted appearance with Sabrina. He called her without thinking about whether it was appropriate. "Noah? What's wrong?" "Ellie's surgery got moved up. 3 weeks from now." Silence. Then, "That's good, right? Sooner is better?" "Yes. But it means everything's happening fast. The payment needs to be processed. The hospital needs confirmation. I need to arrange time off from my freelance work. I'll handle the payment today. Wire transfer directly to the hospital. What else do you need?" Noah closed his eyes. "I don't know. I just needed to tell someone, and you're the only person who understands what this means." "Where's Ellie now?" "School. She doesn't know yet. I'm picking her up this afternoon to tell her." Another pause. "Do you want me to be there?" The offer surprised him. "You don't have to do that." "I know, but 6-year-olds shouldn't hear scary news alone. Even if you're with her, having another person there might help." "Sabrina, this isn't part of our arrangement." "I know that too." Noah thought about Ellie's drawing, about the way she'd asked when Miss Sabrina would visit again, about how his daughter had already decided Sabrina was part of their lives, whether or not that was true. "Okay," he said, "if you're sure." "I'm sure. Text me the address of her school. I'll meet you there at 3. That afternoon, Noah stood outside Ellie's school and watched Sabrina's car pull up. She got out wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual business clothes, her hair down, looking more like a regular person than he'd ever seen her. "You changed," he said. Didn't want to scare her by showing up in a power suit. Sabrina glanced at the school entrance. "How do you want to do this?" "Just follow my lead. Let me tell her about the surgery. You just be there as support." "I can do that." When Ellie ran out of school and saw both of them waiting, her face lit up like Christmas morning. "Miss Sabrina!" "Daddy, why is Miss Sabrina here?" "She came to say hello," Noah said. "How was school?" "Good. We learned about butterflies. Did you know they taste with their feet?" "I did not know that." Ellie grabbed Sabrina's hand unselfconsciously. "Did you know that, Miss Sabrina?" "No," Sabrina said, looking slightly overwhelmed. "That's very interesting." They walked to a park near the school, Ellie chattering the whole way about butterflies and her friend Maya and the art project she was making with the supplies Sabrina had sent. Noah watched Sabrina listen with what looked like genuine interest, asking questions that made Ellie beam. When they sat down on a bench, Noah took a breath and said, "Ellie, sweetheart, I need to talk to you about something important." Ellie's expression turned serious immediately. She'd learned early that important usually meant something about her heart. "Your surgery got moved up," Noah said gently. "Instead of 2 months, it's going to be 3 weeks from now." Ellie processed this carefully. "Is that bad?" "No, baby. It's good. It means you get to feel better sooner." "Will it hurt?" Noah's chest tightened. "For a little bit. But then you'll feel so much better. You'll be able to run and play without getting tired. You won't need as many doctor visits." "Will you be there?" "Every second. I'm not going anywhere." Ellie looked at Sabrina. "Will you be there too?" Sabrina's expression flickered with something Noah couldn't read. Sweetheart, Miss Sabrina has to work, Noah started. But she could visit after, right? When I'm feeling better? Sabrina met Noah's eyes for a long moment. Then she looked at Ellie and said, Yes, I can visit after. Ellie nodded, satisfied. Okay, then I'm not scared. Just like that, with the easy resilience of children, she accepted the news and went back to talking about butterflies. After they dropped Ellie off at Noah's apartment with Mrs. Chen, Sabrina and Noah stood outside his building in the late afternoon sun. You didn't have to promise to visit, Noah said. I know. She'll hold you to it. I know that too. Noah studied her face. Why did you come today? Really? Sabrina was quiet for a long moment. Because when you called this morning, you sounded scared, and I thought you shouldn't have to be scared alone. We barely know each other. I know. This arrangement has an end date. I know that too. Then why does it feel like we're both pretending we don't know those things? Sabrina looked up at him with those careful, guarded eyes that were starting to show cracks. Because maybe we're not as good at pretending as we thought we were. Before Noah could respond, his phone rang. The hospital, confirming the surgery date and payment details. He took the call, and when he hung up, Sabrina was already walking back to her car. I'll see you at the conference next week, she said. Sabrina, wait. This is still just an arrangement, Noah. We can't forget that. Can't we? She stopped but didn't turn around. No, because I can't afford to lose focus right now. The board vote is in 3 weeks. The same week as Ellie's surgery. I need to be completely prepared, completely stable, completely in control. And being around me makes you feel out of control. Yes. At least she was honest. After she left, Noah went upstairs and found Ellie showing Mrs. Chen the butterfly facts she'd learned in school. His daughter looked happy, excited about the surgery in the way only a child who didn't fully understand it could be. That night, after Ellie was asleep, Noah's phone buzzed with a message from Sabrina. The hospital confirmed they received the payment. Everything is set. He typed back, Thank you. A pause, then, I meant what I said about visiting after. I don't break promises to children. I know you don't. The conference is in 5 days. My assistant will send you the details. Okay. He waited to see if she'd say anything else, but the message stayed on read. The business conference was the biggest event yet. 300 industry leaders gathered at a hotel convention center to discuss market trends and innovation strategies. Sabrina was scheduled to deliver a keynote speech, and Noah's role was to be visible and supportive in the audience. Just sit in the front row, Sabrina's assistant had instructed. Look interested during her speech. Applaud at the right moments. Afterward, there's a networking reception where you'll need to circulate with her. Noah arrived early and found a seat with a clear view of the stage. The room filled with people in expensive suits carrying tablets and phones, all of them radiating the kind of casual confidence that came from being important. When Sabrina took the stage, the room went quiet. She looked different up there, powerful, certain, completely in her element. She talked about innovation and market disruption and the future of medical technology with the kind of authority that made it impossible not to listen. Noah watched her command the room and thought about the woman who'd sat in his apartment playing with a 6-year-old, asking careful questions about butterflies. Both versions were real. He was starting to realize Sabrina had spent so long being the CEO that she'd forgotten how to be anything else. Her speech ended to enthusiastic applause. People stood. Noah stood with them, clapping, watching Sabrina scan the crowd until her eyes found his. She smiled. Just for a second, just for him, before the professional mask slid back into place. The networking reception was exactly as awful as Noah expected. He stood next to Sabrina while she worked the room, shaking hands and making small talk with people who all seemed to know each other. Occasionally, someone would ask Noah a question, and he'd give his rehearsed answers about architecture and family and how proud he was of Sabrina's work. It was exhausting and fake, and he was getting better at it, which somehow made it worse. Halfway through the evening, Marcus appeared. Sabrina, he said warmly, like they were old friends. Excellent speech, very inspiring. Thank you, Marcus. And Noah, good to see you again. How's the daughter? The question was designed to sound caring and came out patronizing. She's great, Noah said evenly. Surgery is scheduled for 3 weeks from now. How wonderful that you can afford the best care now. Marcus smiled. It must be quite a relief. Sabrina's hand tightened on Noah's arm, a warning to stay calm. It is, Noah said. Knowing she'll be healthy, that's all that matters. Of course. Family first, right? Marcus turned to Sabrina. Speaking of family, have you given any thought to the board's proposal about the co-CEO position? I've thought about it extensively, Sabrina said coolly, and I plan to oppose it. Even though it would give you support? Someone to share the burden? I don't need support. I need the board to trust that I can run my own company. Our company, Marcus corrected gently. Vale Industries belongs to the family, not just you. Our father left it to me. He left it to you when you were the only option. Now there are other possibilities. Marcus glanced at Noah. I'm sure you understand the importance of succession planning. What happens if Sabrina burns out? If the pressure becomes too much? Then she'll handle it, Noah said, the same way she's handled everything else. Noble sentiment, but sentiment doesn't run a billion-dollar corporation. Sabrina stepped forward slightly, putting herself between Noah and Marcus. This conversation is over. Enjoy the rest of your evening. She walked away and Noah followed, feeling Marcus's eyes on them the whole time. I'm sorry, Sabrina said when they were alone. He's trying to provoke you, trying to make you react badly so he can prove you're unstable, and therefore I'm unstable for being with you. I know what he's doing. You handled it well. Did I? Noah turned to face her. Because I'm starting to think Marcus is right about one thing. You are carrying too much. This company, the board pressure, this fake relationship, it's all too much for one person. I don't have a choice. Yes, you do. You could walk away, sell your shares, start something new, build a life that isn't about proving yourself every single day. Sabrina looked at him like he'd suggested she cut off her own arm. I can't do that. Why not? Because this company is all I have. Her voice rose, drawing looks from nearby guests. She lowered it to a harsh whisper. I have no family, no friends, no hobbies, no life outside these walls. If I walk away from Vale Industries, I have nothing. I am nothing. That's not true. Yes, it is. And pretending otherwise doesn't change reality. They stared at each other in the middle of the reception, surrounded by people who were pretending not to watch, and Noah saw the truth written plainly on Sabrina's face. She was terrified, not of losing the company, of discovering that without it, she didn't know who she was. Noah didn't call Sabrina for 3 days after the conference. He told himself it was because they both needed space, needed to remember what this arrangement actually was. But really, he was trying to figure out how to care less about someone who'd made it clear she couldn't afford to care back. It wasn't working. Ellie kept asking when Miss Sabrina would visit again. Noah kept making vague promises about after the surgery, while trying to prepare his daughter for the possibility that Sabrina might not come at all. 6-year-olds didn't understand contract obligations or exit strategies or the difference between performing a relationship and living one. But she promised, Ellie said on the third night when Noah was tucking her into bed. And you always say promises are important. They are, sweetheart, but sometimes adults make promises they can't keep. That's lying. It's more complicated than that. No, it's not. Either you keep promises or you don't. Noah kissed her forehead and wished the world was as simple as his daughter believed it to be. On the 4th day, Sabrina's assistant called. Miss Vale asked me to remind you about the company anniversary gala, the assistant said, her voice professionally pleasant. It's in 2 weeks, the final contracted appearance. She'll need you there at 7, same protocol as before. I know, I have it on my calendar. Good. Also, Miss Vale wanted me to ask about Ellie's surgery date. She has it marked, but wanted to confirm the timing hasn't changed. Noah felt something complicated twist in his chest. Still scheduled for 3 weeks from now, the day after the gala. I'll let her know. Is there anything you need? Any questions about the event? No, I'm good. After he hung up, Noah stared at his phone and tried to figure out why Sabrina was communicating through her assistant instead of directly. Maybe she was busy. Maybe she was being professional. Maybe she was putting distance between them before the arrangement ended and they went back to being strangers. He told himself it didn't matter. This was always going to end. Better to start the separation now. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Sabrina directly. Sorry for the assistant call. Things have been chaotic. How are you? Noah typed and deleted 3 responses before settling on, Fine, preparing for Ellie's surgery. How is she doing? Excited, scared, both at once. That makes sense. A pause. Then Noah typed, Why didn't you just call me yourself? The response took longer this time. Because every time I talk to you, I forget why we're supposed to keep this professional. Noah stared at those words for a long time. Then he called her. She answered on the second ring. I thought we were texting. We were, but I need to ask you something and I can't do it over text. Okay? What are we doing, Sabrina? Really? Silence on the other end. Then quietly, I don't know anymore. When this arrangement ends, when the gala is over and the contract is fulfilled and we've both gotten what we needed, what happens then? We go back to our separate lives. That was always the plan. Is that what you want? It's what makes sense. That's not what I asked. Sabrina was quiet for so long Noah thought she might have hung up. Then she said, What I want doesn't matter. I have a board vote in 2 weeks that will determine whether I keep my company or lose it to Marcus. I have investors watching every move I make. I have an empire to protect and no room for distractions. Is that what I am? A distraction? She stopped, started again. You're someone who makes me forget that the company is all I have, and that's dangerous because when this ends, when you walk away with your daughter and your life and your future, I'll still be here alone. I need to remember that. Noah's grip tightened on the phone. What if you didn't have to be alone? Noah, don't. I'm serious. What if there was another option here? Something that wasn't just an arrangement or a performance or a calculated strategy? There isn't. Why not? Because I don't know how to be anything other than what I am. Her voice broke slightly. I don't know how to have a normal relationship or a normal life. I don't know how to be someone's partner without turning it into a transaction. I've spent 30 years building walls, and I don't know how to tear them down. You don't have to tear them down all at once. You could start with 1 brick. And then what? Hope the whole structure doesn't collapse? Maybe, Noah said quietly. Or maybe you build something new instead of just protecting something old. Sabrina made a sound that was half laugh, half sob. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, but it might be worth it. Another long silence. Then, the gala is in 2 weeks. Let's just get through that first. And then? And then we'll figure it out. It wasn't a promise, but it wasn't a rejection either. The week before the gala, Ellie got sick. Not seriously sick, just a regular kid cold that made her tired and cranky and convinced she was dying. Noah stayed home from his freelance work to take care of her, making soup and reading stories and trying not to panic every time she coughed. I don't want to be sick for my surgery, Ellie said miserably. Dr. Martinez said I have to be healthy. You will be, sweetheart. This is just a little cold. You'll be better in a few days. But what if I'm not? What if they have to cancel? They won't. And even if they did, they'd just reschedule. Your surgery is going to happen. Ellie pulled her blanket tighter around herself. Will Miss Sabrina still visit if I'm not in the hospital? Noah sighed. They were back to this again. Ellie, I need you to understand something. Miss Sabrina and I, we're not together the way you think we are. But you go to fancy parties together. For work. It's complicated adult stuff. Do you like her? The question was so direct, so innocent, that Noah didn't know how to answer without lying. Yes, he said finally. I like her. Does she like you? I think so, but liking someone isn't always enough. Why not? Because people are complicated. They have jobs and responsibilities and fears that get in the way of what they want. Ellie considered this seriously. That sounds dumb. Despite everything, Noah laughed. Yeah, sweetheart, it kind of is. His phone rang. Sabrina's name appeared on the screen and Noah felt his heart do something stupid. I have to take this, he told Ellie. You okay for a minute? She nodded, already half asleep. Noah stepped into the hallway and answered. Hey. Is Ellie sick? Sabrina asked without preamble. Your babysitter mentioned something when she called to confirm next week's schedule. Just a cold, she's fine. You're sure? The surgery is so close if there's any risk. Sabrina, she's fine. Kids get colds. It doesn't mean anything. Okay, good. She paused. I was worried. Noah leaned against the wall and closed his eyes. You were worried about Ellie? Yes. Is that strange? No, it's... He stopped, trying to find the right words. It's really nice, actually. I sent something for her. It should arrive tomorrow. Just some books and a stuffed animal. Nothing major. You didn't have to do that. I know, but she's sick and I thought it might cheer her up. Noah felt something shift in his chest, something dangerous and hopeful. Thank you. You're welcome. A pause. How are you holding up? Honestly, I'm terrified. The surgery is a week and a half away and I keep thinking about everything that could go wrong. What does the doctor say? That the prognosis is excellent, that this type of surgery has a very high success rate, that Ellie is strong and healthy and should recover well. But you're still scared. She's my daughter. I'm always scared. Sabrina was quiet for a moment. Can I tell you something? Of course. The board vote is the same day as Ellie's surgery. I didn't realize it when they scheduled it, but now I can't stop thinking about the timing. You'll be at the hospital with Ellie, and I'll be in a boardroom fighting to keep my company, and neither of us will be able to help the other. We don't need to help each other. This arrangement ends at the gala. I know, but it feels wrong anyway, like we should be... She stopped. Should be what? Nothing. Never mind. I should let you go. Take care of Ellie. Sabrina, wait! But she'd already hung up. The package arrived the next morning. Inside were 3 books about brave kids having adventures, a stuffed elephant that matched the one Ellie already had, and a note that said, Feel better soon. Being sick is the worst. Your friend Sabrina. Ellie clutched the new elephant and the note like they were treasures. See, Daddy? She's my friend. She said so. Noah looked at his daughter's hopeful face and wondered what he'd done. He'd taken Sabrina's money to solve a problem, agreed to an arrangement that was supposed to be clean and simple and transactional. Instead, he'd let his daughter get attached to someone who'd made it clear she didn't know how to stay. And worse, he'd gotten attached too. The day before the gala, Noah met Sabrina at her office to finalize the details. It was the first time he'd seen her in person since the conference. She looked tired, stressed, like she'd been sleeping even less than usual. The skin under her eyes was darker than he remembered, and her smile when she saw him didn't quite reach her eyes. Thanks for coming, she said, gesturing to a chair. I know this is last minute, but I wanted to make sure we were on the same page about tomorrow night. What's different about tomorrow? Everything. Sabrina pulled up a document on her tablet. The anniversary gala is bigger than the other events. More press, more investors, more board members. Marcus will be there with his own date, trying to prove he's the stable one, while making me look unstable by comparison. So we need to be extra convincing. Exactly. Which means I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. Noah felt something cold settle in his stomach. Okay. Sabrina met his eyes. Can you do this? Can you stand beside me tomorrow night and convince everyone in that room that we're a real couple? Not just going through the motions, but actually together. Because if there's any doubt, if anyone suspects this is an arrangement, Marcus will use it to destroy me. I can do it. You're sure? Because I know this has gotten complicated. I know She gestured vaguely between them. I know lines have gotten blurred. But tomorrow night, I need those blurred lines to work in our favor. Noah stood and crossed to where she sat behind her massive desk. Sabrina, look at me. She did. Tomorrow night, I will stand beside you and make everyone in that room believe we're together. Not because you're paying me, not because of the contract, but because He stopped, trying to find the right words. Because you deserve to have someone in your corner. And if I can be that person for one more night, I will. Something flickered in Sabrina's eyes. Why? Because somewhere along the way, this stopped being just an arrangement for me. And I think it stopped being just an arrangement for you too. Noah, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to admit anything or make any promises. Just let me do this. Let me help you get through tomorrow. Then we can figure out what happens next. Sabrina stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city she'd spent her whole life trying to conquer. I don't know how to want things for myself. I only know how to want things for the company. Then maybe it's time to learn. She turned back to him. What if I fail? What if I try to be something other than a CEO and I'm terrible at it? Then you figure it out, same way you figured out everything else. It's not that simple. Why does it have to be complicated? Sabrina laughed, but it sounded broken. Because I'm terrified that if I let myself want something beyond this company, beyond this life I've built, I'll lose everything. I'll lose my focus and my edge and the one thing I've always been good at. Noah crossed the room and took her hands. Or maybe you'll gain something worth more than an empire. Nothing's worth more than an empire. Yes, there is. You just haven't let yourself believe it yet. They stood there in her office, hands clasped, and Noah could feel her trembling. This woman who commanded boardrooms and made million-dollar decisions and never showed weakness was shaking like a leaf because someone had suggested she might deserve more than work. Tomorrow night, she said finally. Let's just get through tomorrow night. And then? And then Ellie has her surgery, and you focus on her recovery. That's what matters. Not me, not the company, not whatever this is between us. Your daughter's health comes first. Sabrina, I mean it, Noah. When you're at that hospital with Ellie, I don't want you thinking about me or the board vote or anything else. Promise me. He wanted to argue, wanted to tell her that he could care about both things at once, that her fight mattered too. But looking at her face, seeing the genuine concern there, he nodded. I promise. But that doesn't mean I won't be thinking about you anyway. Then think about me after. When Ellie's recovered and everything's settled and we can actually figure out what this is. Is that what you want, to figure this out? Sabrina held his gaze. Ask me again after tomorrow night. The gala was being held at the same venue as the first one, but everything felt different this time. Noah arrived early and found Sabrina already there, pacing in a private room off the main ballroom. You're here, she said, relief flooding her face. I thought maybe you'd changed your mind. I told you I'd be here. I know, but people say a lot of things. Noah crossed to her and adjusted her necklace, which didn't need adjusting. How are you feeling? Terrified. The board vote is Monday. This is my last chance to prove I'm stable and competent and deserving of running this company alone. You are all those things. Marcus doesn't think so. Half the board doesn't think so. They see a woman who works too hard and lives alone and doesn't have anything outside the office. But you do now. You have me. At least for tonight. Sabrina's eyes met his. What if I want more than tonight? The question hung between them, dangerous and honest. Then you tell me that, Noah said. After tomorrow, after the surgery, after everything settles, you tell me what you want, and we'll figure it out. What if what I want is impossible? Nothing's impossible, just hard. Before Sabrina could respond, her assistant knocked on the door. Miss Vale, they're ready for you? Sabrina took a deep breath, straightened her shoulders, and transformed into the CEO everyone expected to see. Let's go. The ballroom was packed. Easily 500 people, all dressed in their finest, all there to celebrate Vale Industries' 50th anniversary. Noah recognized some faces from previous events. Board members, investors, family members who looked at Sabrina with varying degrees of approval and suspicion. Marcus was there with a woman who looked like she'd been hired for the occasion. She was beautiful, polished, perfectly pleasant, and clearly had no real connection to Marcus beyond tonight. It was exactly what Sabrina and Noah had started out doing, except they'd somehow stumbled into something real along the way. Sabrina! Richard Pemberton approached with his wife. You look wonderful. And Noah, good to see you again. You too, Richard. Big week coming up, Richard said, his tone carefully neutral. The board vote on Monday. I assume you're prepared? Completely, Sabrina said. I have a full presentation ready on why the current leadership structure is working and why adding a co-CEO position would be detrimental to the company's growth. Good. Though I have to say, the board isn't just looking at presentations. They're looking at the full picture. Your stability, your ability to balance professional and personal demands, your long-term vision. He glanced at Noah when he said it, making the subtext clear. Noah's presence here mattered. What he represented, stability, family, normalcy, was part of Sabrina's case for remaining sole CEO. After Richard moved on, Noah leaned close to Sabrina. No pressure or anything. Welcome to my world. Everything's pressure. The evening proceeded with speeches and toasts and a video presentation about Vail Industries' history that included footage of Sabrina's father. Noah watched Sabrina's face tighten when her father appeared on screen, watched her blink rapidly and compose herself, and paste on a smile that looked painful. When it was Sabrina's turn to speak, she took the stage with the kind of confidence that came from years of practice. Her speech was perfect, acknowledging the past while looking toward the future, thanking the board while making it clear she was the right person to lead them forward, showing gratitude without showing weakness. Noah watched from his seat in the front row and thought about the woman he'd met in a cafe weeks ago, the one who'd offered him money to solve both their problems, the one who'd been so sure this could stay transactional. She was still that woman, but she was also someone else now, someone who sent his daughter stuffed animals when she was sick, someone who called to check on surgery dates, someone who'd admitted she was terrified of wanting anything beyond her empire. The speech ended to thunderous applause. Sabrina returned to her seat beside Noah, and he took her hand without thinking about it. "You did great," he said. "I barely remember what I said." "You were perfect." Perfect is exhausting. During dinner, Marcus made his move. He approached their table with his date in tow, all smiles and false warmth. "Sabrina, wonderful speech. Very moving." "Thank you, Marcus." "And Noah, still here, I see. That's dedication." Noah felt Sabrina's hand tighten on his arm. "Did you need something, Marcus?" "Just making conversation, though I did want to ask Noah something, if you don't mind." "I do mind, actually. How much is she paying you?" The question cut through the ambient noise like a knife. Nearby tables went quiet. People turned to watch. Noah felt his face flush but kept his voice steady. "Excuse me? It's a simple question. Sabrina's wealthy, you're struggling financially, she suddenly needs a stable relationship right before a critical board vote. I'm just curious what the going rate is for a fake fiancé these days." "Marcus, that's enough." Sabrina stood, her voice cold and controlled. "Is it? Because I think the board deserves to know whether this relationship is real or just another one of your strategic maneuvers." Marcus looked around at the watching crowd. "She does that, you know. Treats people like chess pieces. Moves them around the board until they serve her purpose, then discards them." Noah stood too. Every instinct told him to walk away, to not give Marcus the reaction he wanted. But looking at Sabrina's face, seeing the humiliation and anger and fear there, Noah realized walking away wasn't an option. "You want to know what I'm getting out of this relationship?" Noah said, his voice carrying across the quiet ballroom. "I'm getting to know someone who fights for what she believes in, even when everyone tells her she's not enough. I'm getting to watch someone build an empire while people like you try to tear it down out of jealousy. I'm getting to stand beside someone who cares more about doing things right than doing things easily." Marcus's smile faltered. "Very touching, but that doesn't answer my question. You asked what I'm getting out of this. That's my answer. What Sabrina's getting is someone who sees her as more than a quarterly report or a strategic asset. Someone who knows that a person's value isn't measured by their stock portfolio or their board position." "How philosophical, but we both know that you're terrified," Noah interrupted. "Because Sabrina's better at this than you'll ever be. She's smarter, more capable, more dedicated. The only way you can compete with her is by trying to make her look unstable. But here's the thing, Marcus. Stability isn't about having a partner. It's about knowing who you are and what you stand for. And Sabrina knows exactly who she is." The ballroom was completely silent now. Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, then turned to Sabrina. "Is this your defense? Letting your paid boyfriend make speeches?" "He's not my paid boyfriend," Sabrina said quietly. "He's someone I care about. And the fact that you can't tell the difference says a lot more about you than it does about me." She took Noah's hand and walked toward the exit. The crowd parted for them, and Noah caught glimpses of faces as they passed. Richard nodding approvingly, board members looking thoughtful, Marcus standing alone and furious in the middle of the ballroom. They didn't stop until they reached the same balcony where they talked during the first gala. Out here, the night air was cool and clean, and the noise from inside was muffled and distant. I'm sorry, Noah said immediately. I shouldn't have engaged with him. I should have just walked away. No. Sabrina turned to face him. What you said in there, did you mean it? Every word. The part about caring about me. Was that real, or were you just playing the part? Noah looked at this woman who'd offered him a contract and given him something infinitely more complicated instead. It was real, all of it. I tried not to let it be real, but it happened anyway. Sabrina's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I care about you too, and Ellie, and I don't know what to do with that because I've never cared about anything except the company, and I'm terrified I'll mess it up. You won't. You don't know that. You're right, I don't. But I know you don't give up on things that matter to you, and if we matter to you even half as much as you matter to us, we'll figure it out. What if the board votes against me? What if I lose the company? Then you build something else. Start over. Find a new challenge. What if I don't want to build something else? What if all I want is to keep what I already have? Noah stepped closer. Then we fight for it, together. Not because of a contract or an arrangement or because it's strategic, but because it's what we both want. Sabrina looked up at him, and for the first time since he'd met her, she looked genuinely uncertain. I don't know how to do this, any of this. The personal stuff, the relationship stuff. I only know how to work. Then we'll figure it out together. One day at a time, starting with Ellie's surgery, which is the day of the board vote. I know. And I'll be at the hospital with Ellie like I promised, but that doesn't mean I won't be thinking about you. Hoping you win. Knowing you deserve to win. What if I don't win? Then you'll still be the same person you were before. The company doesn't define you, Sabrina. You define the company. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, Can I ask you something? Anything. After Ellie's surgery, after she's recovered and healthy, will you have dinner with me? A real dinner. Not for show, not for the board. Just us. Noah felt something warm expand in his chest. Are you asking me on a date? I think I am. Is that stupid? It's the least stupid thing I've heard all night. Sabrina almost smiled. So is that a yes? That's definitely a yes. They stood on the balcony in the cool night air, and Noah pulled Sabrina close. She came willingly, resting her forehead against his shoulder like she was tired of holding herself up alone. Thank you, she said quietly, for tonight, for what you said to Marcus, for meaning it. You're welcome. The contract ends tonight. After this, you're free to walk away. I know. But you're not going to, are you? Noah pulled back to look at her face. No, I'm not going to walk away. Not unless you want me to. I don't want you to. Then I'm staying. Sabrina kissed him then, soft and uncertain and real. It wasn't their first kiss. They'd kissed before for cameras, for appearances, for the watching crowd. But this was different. This was honest. When they pulled apart, Sabrina said, We should probably go back inside. Probably. People will talk if we don't. They're already talking. True. She took his hand. Tomorrow's going to be hard. The surgery, the board vote, all of it. I know. But after tomorrow, maybe things get easier. Maybe, Noah agreed. Or maybe they just get different, but different doesn't have to be bad. They walked back into the ballroom together, hand in hand, and Noah caught sight of their reflection in the glass doors. They looked like a real couple, like two people who'd chosen each other instead of being chosen by convenience or strategy or desperation. Maybe that's exactly what they were becoming. The rest of the gala passed in a blur. Noah and Sabrina circulated together, answering questions about Marcus's outburst with carefully neutral responses. Most people seemed satisfied with what Noah had said, seemed to believe the relationship was real. It was real now. That was the strange part. When the evening finally ended, when the last guest said goodbye and they were standing outside waiting for Sabrina's car, Noah said, I should probably go home. Mrs. Chen's with Ellie and I want to check on her before it gets too late. Of course. Tell her I said hello. I will. He paused. The surgery's at 9 tomorrow morning. I probably won't be able to check my phone much and I understand. Focus on Ellie. That's what matters. What time is the board vote? 10, but it'll probably run long. These things always do. So while Noah was watching his daughter go into surgery, Sabrina would be fighting for her company in a boardroom. Two battles happening simultaneously, neither of them able to help the other. "Good luck," Noah said. "You too." The car arrived. Before Sabrina got in, she turned back and kissed Noah one more time. "Whatever happens tomorrow, we'll deal with it. Together." "Together," Noah agreed. He watched her car disappear into the night, then walked the 6 blocks to his apartment because he needed the time to think. Tomorrow, everything would change. Either Ellie's surgery would go well, or it wouldn't. Either Sabrina would keep her company, or she wouldn't. Either they'd figure out how to make this relationship work, or they wouldn't. But for the first time in weeks, Noah wasn't afraid of the uncertainty. Because whatever happened, they'd face it together. And that had to count for something. Noah didn't sleep the night before Ellie's surgery. He sat in the chair beside her bed, watching her breathe, trying to memorize the sound of it. She looked so small under the blankets, clutching both elephants. The old one Noah had won at a street fair, and the new one Sabrina had sent. Even in sleep, Ellie held on to both of them like she understood they represented different parts of her life that she wasn't ready to choose between. At 5 in the morning, Noah finally gave up on sleep and made coffee he didn't drink. He checked his phone obsessively, even though he knew Sabrina wouldn't text this early. She had her own battle to prepare for. The board vote at 10 that would determine whether she kept her company or lost it to Marcus. Their fights were happening simultaneously in different parts of the city, and there was nothing either of them could do to help the other. Ellie woke up at 6, groggy and confused about why they were getting ready so early. "Is it time for my surgery?" she asked, her voice small. "Yes, sweetheart. We need to get to the hospital." "I'm scared, Daddy." Noah pulled her into his lap, both elephants and all. "I know, but Dr. Martinez is really good at this. And when you wake up, your heart is going to feel so much better." "Will it hurt?" "For a little bit. But I'll be right there when you wake up. I'm not going anywhere." Ellie was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Can Miss Sabrina come visit after?" Noah's chest tightened. "She's going to try, baby. But she has something really important happening today, too." "More important than my surgery?" "Not more important, just important in a different way." Ellie seemed to accept this. At 6 years old, she'd learned that adults had complicated lives that didn't always make sense. The hospital intake process was a blur of paperwork and prep work, and nurses asking the same questions over and over. Ellie was brave through most of it, only crying when they put in the IV. Noah held her hand and told her stories about all the things they'd do when she was better, parks and playgrounds, and maybe even a trip to the zoo she'd been begging for. Dr. Martinez arrived at 8:30, calm and reassuring in the way that made Noah trust her completely. "Everything looks good," she said, reviewing Ellie's charts. "We're going to take excellent care of her. The surgery should take about 4 hours. Someone will come update you every hour or so, and I'll talk to you as soon as we're done." 4 hours, Noah repeated, trying not to think about everything that could happen in 4 hours. "She's strong. She's going to do great." Dr. Martinez knelt down to Ellie's level. "You ready to fix that heart of yours?" Ellie nodded, clutching her elephants. "You can bring one with you," Dr. Martinez said. "Which one?" Ellie looked between the two elephants, clearly torn. Then she handed the new one, Sabrina's elephant, to Noah. "You keep this one, Daddy, so you're not lonely while I'm gone. I'll take my other one." Noah's throat closed up. He took the elephant and held it like it was something precious. They wheeled Ellie away at 9 exactly, and Noah stood in the hallway watching his daughter disappear through double doors into an operating room where he couldn't follow. The elephant in his hand smelled like Ellie's room, crayons and laundry detergent, and the strawberry shampoo she insisted on using. He found the surgical waiting room and sat in an uncomfortable chair and tried not to fall apart. His phone buzzed at 9:15, a text from Sabrina. "Is she in surgery?" Noah typed back, "Yes, just now. How are you?" "Terrified. Board meeting starts in 45 minutes. I keep running through my presentation and forgetting half of it." "You'll be fine. You know this company better than anyone. Knowing it and keeping it are different things." Noah looked down at the elephant in his lap. "Ellie gave me the elephant you sent. Told me to keep it so I wouldn't be lonely while she's in surgery." A long pause. Then, "That's the sweetest thing I've heard in years. She asked if you'd visit after. I told her you'd try. I will. No matter what happens in this boardroom, I'll come to the hospital as soon as I can. You don't have to do that. The vote might run late. You might need to deal with fallout. Noah, I'm coming. Tell Ellie I promised. He stared at those words and felt something settle in his chest. Okay, good luck in there. You too. I'll be thinking about you both. The first hour was the worst. Noah sat alone with his thoughts and the elephant and every terrible possibility his mind could conjure. He checked his phone every 3 minutes, even though he knew they wouldn't call unless something was wrong. He tried to read a magazine someone had left on the table and couldn't focus on a single word. At 10:15, a nurse came out to give him an update. Everything's going well. Dr. Martinez wanted me to tell you they're progressing exactly as planned. She's okay? She's doing great. We'll update you again in an hour. Noah thanked her and checked his phone again. Nothing from Sabrina. The board meeting had started 15 minutes ago. She was in there right now fighting for her future while Noah sat in a hospital waiting room fighting for his daughters. At 11, another update. Still progressing well, still on schedule. Ellie was stable and strong and exactly where she should be. At 11:30, Noah's phone rang. Sabrina's name appeared on the screen and he answered immediately. Hey, is the meeting over? How did it go? Silence. Then, quietly, can I talk to you for a minute? I'm in the hallway outside the boardroom. Of course. What happened? They voted. Her voice sounded strange, flat. It took 2 hours of presentation and questions and debate. Marcus made his case, I made mine, then they voted. Noah's grip tightened on the phone. And? I need to tell you something first. Something I realized sitting in that boardroom listening to Marcus talk about stability and oversight and all the reasons I shouldn't be running this company alone. Sabrina, what happened with the vote? Just listen for a second, please. She took a breath. I've spent my entire adult life building this company, proving I deserved it, proving I could handle it, proving I was enough. And sitting there today, I realized something. I was fighting so hard to keep it because I thought it was all I had. But that's not true anymore. What are you saying? I'm saying that even if I lost this vote, even if they gave Marcus co-CEO power or pushed me out entirely, I'd still have something. I'd still have you and Ellie, if you'll let me. Noah's chest felt tight. Of course we'd let you, but Sabrina, what happened with the vote? They voted 7-5 in my favor. I keep sole control of the company. Marcus doesn't get the co-CEO position. Relief hit Noah so hard he had to sit down. You won. I won. Richard told me afterward that what you said at the gala made a difference. The board members who were undecided saw how you defended me, saw that I had someone who believed in me, and it tipped the balance. So all those appearances, all that work, it mattered. It mattered, but not the way I thought it would. Sabrina's voice was soft. I thought I needed to prove I had a stable personal life, that I wasn't alone. But what actually mattered was having someone who saw me as more than just the CEO. Someone who reminded me that I'm a person first and a job title second. You've always been a person first, you just forgot for a while. I know, but I'm trying to remember now. She paused. How's Ellie? Good. 2 hours into surgery, everything's going well. They'll update me again in 30 minutes. I'm coming to the hospital. I already told Richard I'm taking the rest of the day off. You don't have to. I promised Ellie I'd visit. I don't break promises to children or to their fathers. After they hung up, Noah sat in the waiting room holding Sabrina's elephant and trying to process what had just happened. Sabrina had won. She'd kept her company, beaten Marcus, proved the board wrong about needing oversight. But more than that, she'd said she had him and Ellie. Like they were a unit now. Like somewhere in the past few weeks, they'd stopped being an arrangement and become something real. The next update came at noon. Surgery was almost done. Dr. Martinez would be out to talk to him soon. Everything had gone exactly as planned. Noah stood and paced the waiting room, too anxious to sit still. Other families were scattered around, people waiting for news about their own loved ones, all of them suspended in that terrible space between fear and hope. At 12:20, Dr. Martinez emerged through the double doors still in her surgical scrubs. Noah's heart stopped. Is she? She's perfect, Dr. Martinez smiled. The surgery went beautifully. We corrected the defect, everything looks exactly how it should, and Ellie's vital signs are strong. She's in recovery now and she'll be groggy for a while, but you can see her in about 20 minutes. Noah felt his knees go weak. She's okay. She's really okay. She's more than okay. She's going to have a completely normal, healthy life. No restrictions, no limitations, just a scar she can show off to her friends and a really impressive recovery story. He wanted to hug Dr. Martinez, but settled for shaking her hand about a dozen times while thanking her profusely. She laughed and told him where to wait, then disappeared back through the doors. Noah collapsed into a chair and finally let himself cry. Relief and exhaustion and overwhelming gratitude all hitting at once. His daughter was okay. She was going to be okay. He texted Sabrina. Surgery's done. She's perfect. Dr. Martinez said everything went beautifully. The response came immediately. Thank God. I'm almost there, 10 minutes away. When they finally let Noah into recovery, Ellie was sleeping peacefully with monitors beeping around her and her old elephant tucked under one arm. She looked small and brave and whole. Noah sat beside her bed and held her hand carefully, mindful of the IV. Hey, sweetheart, you did it. You were so brave. Ellie's eyes fluttered open. Daddy? I'm here, baby. Right here. Did they fix my heart? They fixed it perfectly. Dr. Martinez said you're going to be able to do everything now. Run and play and everything. Ellie smiled sleepily. That's good. I was getting tired of being careful all the time. I know you were. Is Miss Sabrina here? Not yet, but she's on her way. She promised to visit, remember? She keeps her promises. Yes, she does. Ellie drifted back to sleep and Noah sat watching her breathe easily, effortlessly, her fixed heart doing exactly what it was supposed to do. 15 minutes later, a nurse appeared at the door. Mr. Bennett, there's someone here to see you. Says her name is Sabrina? Send her in. Sabrina appeared in the doorway, looking completely out of place in her business suit among all the medical equipment. But when she saw Ellie sleeping peacefully, her whole face softened. She's okay? She asked quietly. She's perfect. Sabrina crossed to the bed and looked down at Ellie with an expression Noah had never seen before. Something tender and protective and real. She looks so small, Sabrina said. She's tougher than she looks. I can see that. Sabrina touched Ellie's hand gently. She's holding her elephant. The old one. She gave me yours to keep me company during surgery. Sabrina's eyes met his. That's very sweet. She's a sweet kid, takes after her dad. Despite everything, Sabrina smiled. You did win. The vote. I did. Honestly, I'm still processing it. Part of me expected to lose, had already started planning what I'd do next. But I won. You deserve it. You've always deserved it. Maybe, but I don't think I would have fought as hard if I didn't have something to prove it for. She looked at Noah. You changed something for me. Made me remember why I started this in the first place. It wasn't just about power or control. It was about building something that mattered. You've built something that matters. I have, but I'm starting to think the most important thing I've built isn't the company. Before Noah could respond, Ellie stirred. Her eyes opened and focused on Sabrina. You came, Ellie said, her voice sleepy and happy. Of course I came. I promised. Did you win your important thing? Sabrina glanced at Noah, then back at Ellie. Yes, sweetheart. I won. That's good. Daddy says winning is nice, but it's more important to try your best. Your daddy's very smart. I know. Ellie yawned. Can you stay for a while? As long as you want me to. The next few hours passed in a gentle blur. Ellie drifted in and out of sleep while nurses came and went checking vitals and adjusting medication. Sabrina stayed the whole time, sitting in the corner of the room and answering work emails on her phone while trying to stay out of the way. It felt natural having her there, like she belonged in this small hospital room as much as she belonged in boardrooms and corner offices. Around 4 in the afternoon, Ellie woke up more alert and wanted to know everything about the surgery. Doctor, Martinez came by to explain it in terms a 6-year-old could understand, drawing pictures of hearts and showing Ellie exactly what they'd fixed. So now I can be a normal kid? Ellie asked. Now you can be exactly the kid you want to be, Dr. Martinez said. No limitations. After the doctor left, Ellie looked at Sabrina. Are you and Daddy getting married? The question came out of nowhere and landed like a bomb. Noah started to deflect, but Sabrina spoke first. Why do you ask that? Because you're here, and you care about us. And Daddy smiles different when you're around. How does he smile different? Like he's happy inside, not just on his face. Sabrina looked at Noah with an expression he couldn't quite read. Your daddy does have a nice smile. So are you getting married? Ellie, Noah said gently. That's a complicated question. Why is it complicated? Because Miss Sabrina and I are still figuring out what we are to each other. You're friends who like each other a lot. That's what people do before they get married. Out of the mouths of children, Noah thought, simplifying everything adults made complicated. Maybe someday, Sabrina said carefully. But right now, we're just focused on making sure you get better and your daddy gets some rest because he's been worried about you. Ellie seemed satisfied with this answer. Okay, but I think you should get married because then we could all live together and I could see you all the time. Would you like that? Sabrina asked. Seeing me all the time? Yes, you're nice and you send good presents and you don't talk to me like I'm a baby. Well, you're not a baby. You're a very brave kid who just had major surgery. The bravest, Ellie agreed, then yawned hugely. As Ellie drifted back to sleep, Noah and Sabrina sat in comfortable silence. The evening light coming through the hospital window was soft and golden, and everything felt surreal and perfect and temporary all at once. She asked if we're getting married, Sabrina said quietly. She's 6. She doesn't understand that relationships are complicated. Are we complicated? Noah thought about it. We started complicated, but maybe we don't have to stay that way. What would simple look like? I don't know. Dating, I guess. Actual dating, getting to know each other without contracts or board votes or performance anxiety. That sounds nice. Sabrina looked at Ellie sleeping peacefully. She really does want us to be together. Kids are optimists. They don't see all the obstacles. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe adults see too many obstacles and talk themselves out of things that could work. Noah turned to look at her fully. Are you saying you want to try this? Actually try it? I'm saying I don't want to go back to my life before I met you. Coming home to an empty penthouse, working 80 hours a week, measuring my worth by quarterly reports. That's not enough anymore. What do you want instead? Sabrina was quiet for a long time. Then she said, I want to come home to noise and mess and a kid asking me about butterflies. I want to have dinner with people who care about me as a person, not as a CEO. I want to build something that matters outside of boardrooms and stock prices. That's a big change from the woman I met in a cafe a few weeks ago. I know. But meeting you changed something, made me realize I'd been living half a life and calling it success. So what now? Now we see if we can make this work, really work, not as an arrangement or a performance, but as two people who care about each other and want to build something together. Noah reached for her hand. I'd like that. But you need to know what you're signing up for. Single dad with a daughter who's going to need careful monitoring for the next few months. Small apartment in a neighborhood you've probably never even visited. A life that's nothing like what you're used to. Good, Sabrina said. I'm tired of what I'm used to. They sat holding hands in the hospital room while Ellie slept and evening turned to night, and Noah thought about how strange life was. A few weeks ago, he'd been desperate and alone and terrified about how to pay for his daughter's surgery. Now his daughter was healthy, the surgery was paid for, and he'd somehow found a relationship with a woman who was completely wrong for him on paper and completely right for him in every way that mattered. Over the next few days, Ellie's recovery progressed smoothly. She was moved from the ICU to a regular room, then released to go home with strict instructions about rest and medication and follow-up appointments. Sabrina visited every day, sometimes for a few hours, sometimes just for 20 minutes between meetings. She brought books and puzzles and sat with Ellie while Noah ran errands or caught up on sleep in the hospital's family room. You don't have to keep coming, Noah told her on the 3rd day. You just won a major board vote. You should be focused on the company. The company will still be there tomorrow. Ellie's only going to be 6 once. It was such a simple statement, but it meant everything. 2 weeks after the surgery, Noah invited Sabrina to dinner at his apartment. Nothing fancy, just the three of them and the macaroni and cheese Ellie had been promising to make. Sabrina showed up in jeans and a sweater, her hair down, looking more relaxed than Noah had ever seen her. "Welcome to our humble home," he said, letting her in. "It's perfect." Ellie was already at the stove with Noah's help, stirring a pot of pasta with intense concentration. "Miss Sabrina, you're here! I'm making my famous macaroni and cheese." "I can't wait to try it." They ate at Noah's small kitchen table, the three of them squeezed around a surface meant for two. The macaroni was overcooked and undersalted and absolutely delicious because Ellie had made it with her whole heart. "This is the best macaroni and cheese I've ever had," Sabrina said seriously. Ellie beamed. "Really? Really? You're an excellent chef." After dinner, Ellie showed Sabrina all her drawings, the ones she'd made before the surgery and the new ones she'd been working on during recovery. Sabrina examined each one carefully, asking questions and making comments that showed she was actually paying attention. Noah watched from the kitchen doorway and felt something settle in his chest. This was what he'd been missing. Not the money or the security or the solution to his problems, just someone who showed up and cared and made his small life feel bigger somehow. Later, after Ellie was in bed, Noah and Sabrina sat on his second-hand couch drinking wine that Sabrina had brought. "Thank you for tonight," she said, "for including me. Thank you for coming, for all of it. The surgery payment, the visits, the way you've shown up for Ellie. I meant what I said at the hospital. I don't want to go back to the life I had before." "So what do you want?" Sabrina looked around his small apartment, the mismatched furniture, the drawings taped to the walls, the life that was nothing like hers. "I want this. Not exactly this, but something like it. A life that includes people and noise and things that matter beyond profit margins. You can have that. You can have both. The company and a personal life." "Can I? Because I've never seen anyone successfully balance both." "That's because you've been trying to do it alone. But you don't have to anymore." Sabrina set down her wine glass. "Noah, I need you to understand something. I'm going to mess this up. I'm going to work too much and miss dinners and prioritize the wrong things sometimes. I've spent 30 years being one kind of person, and I don't know how to be anything else overnight. I know, and I'm going to mess up too. I'm going to be overprotective of Ellie and forget that you have your own life and probably expect too much too fast because I'm not used to having help. So we're both going to mess up, probably constantly. And we're still going to try this?" Noah took her hand. "Yeah. We're still going to try this." Sabrina smiled, and it was the most genuine smile he'd ever seen from her. "Okay then, let's mess up together." They kissed on Noah's worn couch in his small apartment that smelled like overcooked pasta, and it felt more real than anything that had happened in fancy ballrooms or expensive restaurants. This was the life Sabrina had been missing. Not perfect, not polished, but honest. 3 months later, things had settled into a rhythm that worked. Sabrina still ran Vail Industries, still worked long hours and fought battles with board members, and made decisions that affected thousands of people. But now she left the office at 6 most evenings and came to Noah's apartment for dinner. She kept spare clothes in his closet and a toothbrush in his bathroom, and gradually became part of the fabric of their life. Ellie's recovery was complete. She could run and play and do everything Dr. Martinez had promised. The scar on her chest was something she showed her friends with pride, telling elaborate stories about the surgery that got more dramatic with each retelling. Noah had started taking on bigger freelance projects, even considering going back to architecture full-time now that he didn't have to structure his entire life around medical appointments. Sabrina had offered to help financially, but Noah had declined. They were building something together, but he needed to contribute equally. "You're stubborn," Sabrina had said. "You're one to talk." Fair point. One Saturday afternoon, the three of them were at the park. Ellie was on the swings, going higher than she'd ever been allowed to before, while Noah and Sabrina sat on a bench watching. "She looks happy," Sabrina said. "She is happy. We both are." "Me too." Sabrina leaned against Noah's shoulder. "I never thought this was possible. Having both. The company and a family. Is that what we are? A family? Aren't we?" Noah thought about Ellie's drawing from months ago, 3 stick figures holding hands. She'd seen it before either of them had been willing to admit it. "Yeah," he said. "I think we are." Sabrina was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Marcus resigned from the board last week." "Really?" "He took a position at a competitor, said he was tired of working under someone who didn't appreciate his vision. Translation, he was tired of losing to you." "Basically," Sabrina smiled. "Richard told me afterward that the board's never been more confident in my leadership. Turns out, proving you can balance work and personal life actually matters to them." "Who knew?" "Apparently everyone but me." Ellie ran over, breathless and excited. "Daddy, Miss Sabrina, watch this." She proceeded to do a cartwheel that was more enthusiasm than technique, then looked at them expectantly. "That was amazing," Sabrina said seriously. "I've been practicing. Maya taught me." Ellie flopped down on the grass. "Are we having dinner at your place tonight, Miss Sabrina?" "If that's okay with your dad." "It's okay with me," Noah said. Sabrina had bought a new place a month ago, not the penthouse, but a house in a neighborhood with actual families and parks nearby. It had a yard where Ellie could play and a spare room that was slowly being converted into a space for whenever they stayed over. They were taking it slow, not rushing into anything, but they were moving forward together, building something that felt sustainable instead of strategic. "Can we make cookies?" Ellie asked. "We can make whatever you want," Sabrina said. "Even if we mess them up?" "Especially if we mess them up. That's the best part." Later that evening, after they'd made cookies that were slightly burned and absolutely delicious, after Ellie had fallen asleep on Sabrina's couch mid-movie, Noah and Sabrina stood in the kitchen cleaning up. "I have something to tell you," Sabrina said. "That sounds ominous." "It's not. At least I don't think it is." She dried her hands on a towel. "The board asked me to consider bringing on a COO, someone to handle day-to-day operations so I can focus on strategy and growth." "What did you say?" "I said I'd think about it, because the old me would have refused immediately, would have seen it as them trying to limit my power. But the new me realizes that having help isn't the same as being weak. That's growth. It's terrifying, is what it is, but I think it's the right move. It would mean more regular hours, more time for things outside work." "Things like us?" "Things like us. Things like watching Ellie's soccer games and having dinner together and being present instead of always mentally in a boardroom." Noah pulled her close. "I'm proud of you, for winning the vote, for running the company, for all of it, but mostly for figuring out that you're allowed to want more than work." "I'm still figuring it out. Some days are harder than others." "That's okay. We're all still figuring things out." They stood in Sabrina's kitchen, surrounded by cookie crumbs and the sound of Ellie's soft breathing from the other room, and Noah thought about how much had changed in a few months. He'd gone from desperate and alone to having more than he'd ever thought possible. "Can I ask you something?" Sabrina said. "Always." "That first day at the cafe when you were sitting with Ellie on the sidewalk after she dropped her pastry, what were you thinking?" Noah remembered that moment clearly. "I was thinking that I had $50 in my bank account and no idea how I was going to pay for her surgery. I was thinking that being a parent meant showing up even when you're terrified. And I was thinking that I'd give anything to make her world okay again." "You did make it okay." "We made it okay, both of us." "I didn't do anything. I just paid for what you needed." "You did more than that. You showed up. You kept showing up even after the contract ended. You chose us when you could have chosen the easier path." Sabrina's eyes were bright. "You were never the easy path, but you were the right one." 6 months after Ellie's surgery, Noah and Sabrina stood in her backyard watching Ellie play with 3 kids from the neighborhood. It was a warm Saturday afternoon, and they'd invited people over for a barbecue, something Sabrina had never done in her life. "I'm terrible at hosting," she'd said while setting up. "You're doing fine. It's just burgers and small talk." "I run a billion-dollar company. Small talk shouldn't be this hard." But watching her now, laughing with the other parents and making sure all the kids had enough snacks, Noah could see how much she'd changed. She was still the CEO, still powerful and competent and driven, but she was also learning to be other things. A partner. A friend. Someone who could care about people without turning it into a transaction. "She's really good with kids," one of the other mothers said, nodding toward where Sabrina was helping a little boy reach the sandbox. "Does she have any of her own?" "Not yet. Noah said, then surprising himself. But maybe someday. It was the first time he'd let himself think about that possibility. More kids, a bigger family, a future that included all the messy, complicated, beautiful things he'd stopped believing he could have. Later, after everyone had gone home and Ellie was asleep in the spare room, Noah and Sabrina sat on her back porch watching the sunset. "Today was good," Sabrina said. "Yeah, you're getting better at the hosting thing." "I had a good teacher." "Who, me? I've never hosted anything fancier than pizza night." Exactly. You taught me that it doesn't have to be fancy to be good." Noah took her hand. "I've been thinking about something." "Should I be worried?" "No, maybe. I don't know." He took a breath. "My lease is up in 2 months. I was thinking maybe I don't renew it." Sabrina turned to look at him. "Where would you go?" "I was hoping you might have some ideas about that." Understanding dawned in her eyes. "Noah Bennett, are you asking to move in with me?" "I'm suggesting we consider combining households, for practical reasons. Ellie loves it here. I'm here most nights anyway, and it would save money on rent. Very practical. Completely logical. And it has nothing to do with wanting to wake up next to me every morning." "Well, that's a side benefit," Sabrina smiled. "I'd like that. Ellie living here, you living here, all of us being a family officially, instead of just in practice." "You're sure?" "Because it's a big step. Ellie comes with a lot of noise and mess and chaos." "I know, that's what I want." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then Sabrina said, "I never thought I'd have this. A partner who saw me as more than my job. A child who trusted me. A life that felt full instead of just successful. You deserve all of it. So do you. You spent so long taking care of everyone else, you forgot you deserve to be taken care of too. We're taking care of each other now. That's how it's supposed to work." Sabrina leaned her head on Noah's shoulder. "I'm glad you noticed me at that cafe. Glad you were brave enough to accept my ridiculous offer." "I'm glad you made a ridiculous offer, even if it was motivated by desperation and corporate politics. Hey, that desperation and corporate politics led to this. So maybe it wasn't so ridiculous after all." Noah kissed the top of her head. "Maybe not." A year after they'd met, Noah and Sabrina stood in the backyard of the house they now shared and watched Ellie show off her cartwheel to anyone who would pay attention. It was Ellie's 7th birthday party, and the yard was full of kids and parents and the kind of chaos that would have terrified Sabrina a year ago. Now she navigated it with ease, cutting cake and settling disputes and making sure everyone was having fun. "She's a natural," Richard Pemberton said, appearing beside Noah with a plate of cake. "I never would have predicted this transformation." "Which transformation? Sabrina's or mine?" "Both. Though I have to say she's a different person than the one I knew a year ago. Happier, more grounded." "She's the same person. She just remembers she's allowed to be happy now." Richard smiled. "You're good for her. The board's noticed it too. Her decision-making is sharper, her leadership is stronger. Turns out having a life outside work makes you better at work." Imagine that. After Richard wandered off, Sabrina appeared at Noah's side. "What were you two talking about?" "How you've changed, how you're happier now." "I am happier, terrifyingly so." She watched Ellie blow out her candles surrounded by friends. "Sometimes I wake up and can't believe this is my life, that I get to have all of this." "You earned it. We earned it, together." Ellie ran over, frosting on her face and pure joy in her eyes. "Daddy, Miss Sabrina, thank you for the best party ever." "You're welcome, sweetheart," Noah said. "Can we do this every year?" "Every single year," Sabrina promised. Ellie hugged them both and ran back to her friends, and Noah and Sabrina stood together watching the life they'd built from a desperate arrangement and an impossible situation. "I love you," Sabrina said quietly. "I should have said it sooner, but I was scared." "I'm not scared anymore." Noah turned to face her fully. "I love you too. Have for a while now. Even when I was terrible at this, when I worked too much and forgot to show up and didn't know how to be anything but a CEO? Especially then, because you were trying. You're still trying. That's what matters." They kissed in the middle of Ellie's birthday party while kids shrieked and ran around them, and it was perfect in its imperfection. This was what Sabrina had been searching for her whole life without knowing it. Not an empire, not success, just a place where she was enough exactly as she was. And standing in her backyard with frosting-covered children and a man who'd seen through all her walls and a daughter who'd drawn them as a family before they'd even realized that's what they were becoming, Sabrina finally understood something important. The greatest thing she'd ever built wasn't a billion-dollar company or a corporate empire or a legacy that would outlast her. It was this: a family, a home, a life that mattered beyond quarterly reports and board votes and stock prices. She'd spent 30 years believing that success meant standing alone at the top, that needing people was weakness, that love was just another transaction to be managed. She'd been wrong about all of it. Real strength wasn't about standing alone. It was about letting people in. Real success wasn't measured in dollars. It was measured in moments like this: birthday parties and shared dinners and ordinary evenings that felt extraordinary because you spent them with people who loved you. And love wasn't a transaction at all. It was a choice you made every day to show up for someone, to see them fully, to build something together that neither of you could create alone. Noah had taught her that. Ellie had taught her that. They'd both showed her that vulnerability wasn't weakness and needing people wasn't failure, and the smallest life could hold the biggest joy if you let it. As the sun set over their backyard and the party wound down and Ellie fell asleep between them on the couch later that night, Sabrina thought about the woman she'd been a year ago. Alone in her penthouse, convinced her company was all she had, desperate enough to buy a fake relationship because she couldn't imagine a real one. That woman felt like a stranger now. The woman Sabrina had become. The one who left work at 6, who knew how to make macaroni and cheese from a box, who had grass stains on her jeans from playing in the backyard. That woman was real in a way the CEO had never been. She was still the CEO, of course, still ran Vail Industries with skill and dedication and vision, but now it was part of her life instead of all of it, and that made all the difference. "What are you thinking about?" Noah asked, his voice quiet in the darkened living room. "Everything. How much has changed? How much I've changed." "Good changes?" "The best changes." She looked at him. "Thank you for seeing something in me worth fighting for, even when I didn't see it myself. You made it easy. You just needed someone to remind you that you're more than your job." "I'm still learning that." "Me too. Every day." They sat together in the peaceful dark while Ellie slept between them, and Sabrina thought about the future, not the corporate future or the strategic 5-year plan or the market projections, just the human future, the one that included birthday parties and school events and ordinary evenings at home, the one that included love. She'd spent her whole life running from that word, turning it into something strategic or transactional or unimportant compared to success. But now she understood. Love was success. The truest kind. Everything else, the money, the power, the empire, was just noise. This was what mattered. The people you chose and who chose you back. The family you built from nothing but courage and hope and stubborn determination. The life you created when you finally stopped being afraid of wanting more than safety. Sabrina had thought she needed to protect herself by staying alone. Instead, she'd found protection in letting people in. Found strength in admitting weakness, found herself in losing the walls she'd spent 3 decades building. It was the best failure of her life. And sitting there with Noah's arm around her and Ellie's small body warm against her side, Sabrina finally felt something she'd been chasing unsuccessfully for years. She felt home, not in a place, in people. In this makeshift family that had started as a desperate transaction and became the most real thing in her carefully constructed life. In this ordinary moment that felt more valuable than any quarterly earnings report or board approval or corporate victory. This was enough. This was everything. This was the life she'd been too scared to admit she wanted. And for the first time in 30 years, Sabrina Vail wasn't scared anymore.